The stallion's hooves came down like hammers. Grace Hartwell stood in the center of the barn, gray dust rising around her worn boots. Above her, 2,000 pounds of black fury screamed. The horse they called Shadow, because men swore he was possessed by something dark and hungry. His hooves crashed down 6 inches from her face. Every ranch hand watching knew they were about to witness a killing. But she wasn't running. She was standing perfectly still, whispering words no one else could hear. And the horse, the killer horse that had nearly taken Miguel's hand off last Tuesday, was listening. Bennett Drake couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because his wife, this stranger he'd married sight unseen 3 weeks ago, was facing down death with nothing but her voice and a kind of courage that looked like madness. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe it was what happens when you've already survived the unsurvivable. When you've been broken so many times that fear stops meaning anything. When the only thing left to lose is the life you're not sure was worth saving in the first place. The stallion reared again, hooves rising, shadow blocking out the light, and Grace Hartwell didn't flinch. She just kept whispering. August heat in Copper Bend, Montana territory didn't just beat down on a person, it crawled inside and nested there. Thick and mean, Bennett felt it clinging to his shirt as he stood in the shadow of the train depot, hat pulled low, watching the afternoon express hiss and groan to a stop. His hands were steady, his gut wasn't. Somewhere in one of those passenger cars sat a woman he'd never met, never seen, never even heard speak. A woman who in about 5 minutes would become his responsibility for the rest of his life. The whole thing felt insane when he let himself think about it clearly. 3 months ago, he'd sent a letter east through one of those matrimonial agencies, not because he wanted to. Hell, the last thing Bennett Drake needed was another complication. But because Dutch Cooper had cornered him in the barn one morning and laid it out, plain boss. You're 34 years old. This ranch is falling apart because you're trying to run it alone, and every decent woman in 3 counties won't come near you because of what happened with Sarah. You need help. You need a partner. And unless you plan on dying alone in that big empty house you're barely living in, you need a wife. Dutch had a way of cutting through nonsense that Bennett both appreciated and hated. Sarah, 5 years dead now. 5 years since the midwife had come out of that bedroom with blood on her apron and eyes that wouldn't meet his. The baby never drew breath. Sarah hemorrhaged before the doctor could arrive from Billings. 2 lives gone before Bennett could even understand he was losing them. He'd buried them in the plot behind the house. Under the cottonwood tree Sarah had loved, and then he'd stopped living in any way that mattered. The ranch hands whispered about it when they thought he couldn't hear. How the boss had turned to stone after his wife died. How he worked himself past exhaustion every day and still couldn't sleep at night. How he'd go weeks without speaking more than necessary commands. Dutch was right, Bennett was dying. Just slower than Sarah had, so he'd written the letter. Kept it simple, rancher, Montana territory. Land, livestock, home. Seeking practical woman for partnership and marriage. No poets, no dreamers. He'd read it over twice, felt ridiculous both times. Mailed it before he could change his mind. 6 responses came back. He read them at the kitchen table one night. Whiskey glass nearby. Feeling like a fool, most were what he expected. Flowery language about fresh starts and building lives together. The kind of romantic nonsense that made his teeth ache. One woman sent a photograph of herself in a fancy dress that probably cost more than he paid his ranch hands in a month. Another wrote 3 pages about her love of literature and her dream of opening a school. Then there was Grace Hartwell's letter. 4 sentences long, Mr. Drake. I'm 26 years old. I can work hard and I don't complain. If you need a wife, I need a place to be. Not a home, a place to be. That last line stuck in his head like a burr. Something broken in those 4 words. Something that understood the difference between existing and living. He'd written back that same night. Now, 2 months later, here he stood, watching passengers step down from the train into the brutal Montana sun, searching for a woman whose face he'd never seen. She hadn't sent a photograph. He hadn't asked for one. This whole arrangement was business, nothing more. Well. Big Day Drake, the voice came from behind him. Smooth and smug Thomas Brennan, town clerk, Copper Bend's most dedicated gossip, the kind of man who appeared whenever something interesting was about to happen. Like a vulture circling fresh meat, Brennan Bennett didn't turn around. Heard your mail-order bride's coming in today. Brennan stepped up beside him, thumbs hooked in his vest pockets. Mighty curious the whole town is. Woman willing to marry a Drake sight unseen must be desperate, I figure, or damaged. What kind of woman can't find a husband the normal way? Bennett's jaw tightened, the kind that's none of your damn business. Now, no need to be sensitive. Brennan grinned. Just saying what everyone's thinking. Your family's got a reputation, Bennett, after what happened with Sarah, that tragedy, and you being alone all these years. Folks wonder if you're fit for a wife at all. Finish that thought and you'll be picking your teeth up off the platform. Brennan held up his hands. Mock surrender. Still grinning. Touchy subject. Understood. I'll leave you to your bride. He tipped his hat, walked away. But Bennett could feel the man's amusement radiating behind him. Could feel the dozen pairs of eyes watching from various points around the depot. This town loved a spectacle, and he was about to give them one. Bennett's attention snapped back to the platform. Passengers were still disembarking. A family with 3 children, an older couple, 2 men in city suits, and then, last, a woman appeared in the doorway of the passenger car. She was small. That was his first thought, maybe 5'4", thin in a way that spoke of missed meals. Not fashion. She wore a dark gray dress that had been mended more than once, carried a single carpet bag that looked like it had survived a war. Her hair was brown, pulled back severe and practical, and her face. Bennett couldn't see clearly from this distance. But something about the way she stood in that doorway made him hesitate. She wasn't looking around like the other passengers, searching for familiar faces. Taking in the town, she was standing completely still, staring straight ahead at nothing in particular, like she was gathering herself for something difficult. Then she stepped down onto the platform, moving careful and deliberate, and Bennett saw her eyes. Even from 20 feet away, he could see they were different colors, one brown, one a startling pale gray-blue heterochromia. He thought it was called. He'd seen it once in a cattle dog, never in a person around him. Whispers started. Look at her eyes. Devil's mark, cursed the woman. Grace. She looked directly at him. No hesitation, no searching. Like she'd known exactly where he'd be standing. Bennett walked toward her. Boots heavy on the wooden platform. Up close he could see more details. She was older than he'd expected. Not in years, but in the way she held herself. Lines around her eyes that shouldn't have been there on a 26-year-old woman. Her hands clutching the carpet bag were calloused, scarred. Working hands, surviving hands. Mr. Drake, not a question. A statement, Miss Hartwell. He stopped a respectful distance away, suddenly aware of the eyes on them. Train ride all right? It was a train. Her voice was quiet, clear. No accent he could place. Thank you for meeting me. Figured it was the least I could do. Bennett reached for her bag. Let me. I can carry it. She pulled the bag slightly away. Not aggressive, just firm. It's not heavy. Awkward silence settled between them. Bennett had never been good at small talk, and this woman didn't seem inclined to help him out. She just stood there, those mismatched eyes steady on his face. Waiting right, he said finally. Well, welcome to Copperbend, I guess. It's not much. I don't need much. Another silence. Somewhere behind them, Bennett heard Thomas Brennan's distinctive laugh. Didn't need to turn around to know. The man was probably holding court with whoever else had gathered to witness this spectacle. Wagons this way. Bennett gestured. Ranch is about an hour outside town. Grace nodded. Followed him toward the hitching post where his wagon waited. She moved with an economy of motion that struck him as almost military. No wasted steps, no unnecessary movements. Like she'd learned a long time ago that efficiency was survival. As they approached the wagon, Dutch Cooper emerged from the general store across the street. Sack of flour over one shoulder. Dutch was 60 if he was a day, weathered and bow-legged from decades in the saddle. Face like old leather. Eyes that didn't miss much. He'd been with the Drake family since before Bennett was born. Foreman. Surrogate father after Bennett's own father died. The one constant in a life that had taken too much away. This her? Dutch asked. Looking at Grace with undisguised curiosity, Dutch Cooper. Foreman, Bennett said. Dutch. This is Grace Hartwell. My wife. The word felt strange in his mouth. Wife. They hadn't actually married yet. That was scheduled for tomorrow morning at the courthouse. But legally and practically that's what she was about to become. Dutch pulled off his hat. Mom. Welcome to the outfit. Thank you. Grace was studying Dutch with the same intense focus she'd given Bennett. Like she was cataloging information. Reading people. We treating you right so far? Dutch asked. Something protective in his tone that surprised Bennett. Yes. Grace said simply. Good, because if the boss here gives you any trouble, you come find me. I've known him since he was in diapers. I know where all the skeletons are buried. Dutch grinned. Trying to lighten the mood, the corner of Grace's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. I'll remember that. Bennett helped her into the wagon. She accepted his hand this time. Her grip strong despite her size. Climbed up beside him, Dutch gave them a wave and headed back to load supplies. Bennett clicked his tongue. The horses started forward, pulling them away from the depot and onto the dusty main street that ran through Copper Bend. The town wasn't much: general store, saloon, church, handful of houses. The courthouse that doubled as a jail, civilization at its thinnest edge, clinging to the Montana wilderness like a barnacle on a rock. They rode in silence for several minutes. Bennett kept stealing glances at Grace, trying to figure her out. She sat perfectly still beside him, hands folded in her lap, watching the landscape roll past with no readable expression. If she was nervous, scared, having second thoughts, she didn't show it. Finally, Bennett couldn't take the silence anymore. "You talk for? No, that a problem where you're from?" "Sometimes." He waited for her to elaborate. "She didn't look," Bennett said, keeping his eyes on the road ahead. "I'm not good at this. Conversation, I mean. Social things. But we're about to be married, so I figure we should at least try to." "Why did you send for a wife?" The question was so direct it caught him off guard. He glanced at her. She was looking at him now, those odd eyes unwavering. "I told you in the letter. Ranch needs help. I need a partner. You need someone to cook and clean. I need someone who can handle ranch life. The rest of it, the cooking, cleaning, all that, it's part of it, yeah. But mainly I need someone who won't break the first time things get hard." He paused. "Your letter said you could work hard and didn't complain. That true?" "Yes, then we'll get along fine." Grace was quiet for a moment. "Then what happened with Sarah?" Bennett's hands tightened on the reins. "Folks been talking already." "The man at the depot, Brennan. He made sure I heard him tell someone I must be desperate to marry into your family." "Of course he had." Bennett swore under his breath. "Sarah was my wife. She died 5 years ago, childbirth. Baby didn't make it either." He kept his voice flat, factual, the way he always told it. Like if he kept emotion out of the words, they couldn't hurt him. "I'm sorry." Grace said it quietly. No pity in her voice, just acknowledgement. "It was a long time ago. Do people blame you?" The question surprised him. Why would they blame me? Grace looked back out at the landscape. People always need someone to blame when bad things happen. Easier than accepting that sometimes life is just cruel. Bennett didn't know what to say to that. They were clear of town now, the road cutting through open grassland that stretched to the mountains in the distance. It was beautiful country if you could see past the harshness, rolling plains dotted with sage. The Beartooth Mountains rising blue and massive to the south. Sky so big it felt like you could fall into it. But it was also brutal country. Winters that froze cattle where they stood. Summers that baked the life out of everything. Wind that never stopped. Isolation that drove folks mad. "You ever been to Montana Territory before?" Bennett asked. "No, it's not like back east. Things are different here, harder. You have to be tough to survive it." "I'm tough," she said it matter-of-factly. Like stating the color of the sky, Bennett believed her. There was something in the way she held herself. Something in those scars on her hands. That told him this woman had already survived things most people couldn't imagine. "Where are you from, originally?" "East." "That's not an answer, it's the only one I'm giving." Bennett looked at her sharply. She met his gaze without flinching. "We're about to be married," he said. "I think I got a right to know." "You have a right to a wife who works hard and doesn't complain," Grace interrupted. Her voice still quiet, but with steel underneath. "You have a right to someone who won't run when things get difficult." "That's what I agreed to." "You didn't ask for my life story in your letter, Mr. Drake. You asked for a practical woman. I'm here. I'm practical. That's what you're getting." They stared at each other for a long moment. Bennett felt something shift between them. A boundary being drawn. She was right in a way. He'd asked for a transaction. Not a romance, no poets, no dreamers. Well, he'd certainly gotten what he asked for, fair enough. He said finally, turning back to the road, "But it's Bennett, not Mr. Drake. We're past formal at this point." "Bennett," she repeated, testing the name, then softer. "Thank you for sending for me. For giving me somewhere to go." The gratitude in her voice was unexpected. Somehow harder to hear than her earlier bluntness. It made him wonder what she was running from. What she was so grateful to escape that she'd marry a complete stranger in the middle of nowhere. But he didn't ask. She'd drawn her line. He'd respect it, for now. The ranch came into view as they crested a low rise about 40 minutes later. The Drake spread covered 3,000 acres of grassland and timber, running up against the foothills of the Beartooths. Main house sat in a valley with a creek running through it. Two-story structure built from local timber and river rock, solid and plain. Surrounding it were the barn, bunkhouse, corrals, various outbuildings, a working ranch. Not a showplace. Bennett watched Grace's face as she took it in, trying to gauge her reaction. but as usual she gave nothing away, just looked at everything with that same careful attention, cataloging, assessing. It's big, she said finally, 3,000 acres. We run about 500 head of cattle plus horses. Got 4 ranch hands plus Dutch. It's a lot of work. I'm not afraid of work, so you keep saying. He pulled the wagon up in front of the main house. 2 ranch hands, Joel Hutchins and Miguel Ortiz, were working nearby, mending a section of fence. They stopped when they saw the wagon, both staring with undisguised curiosity at Grace Joel. Miguel, this is Grace Hartwell, Bennett called out. We're getting married tomorrow, so she's the new boss lady. Treat her accordingly. Both men pulled off their hats. Joel, a lanky 20-year-old with red hair and perpetual sunburn, grinned. Ma'am, welcome to the circus. Miguel, older and quieter, just nodded respectfully. Senora, thank you. Grace acknowledged them both. Joel, you finish that fence, Bennett ordered Miguel. Let Dutch know we're back. Tell him to come up to the house in about an hour. Both men nodded, went back to work, though Bennett could feel their eyes following as he led Grace toward the house. The front door opened into a large main room that served as kitchen, dining area, living space. It was clean but so Spartan, a table, chairs, cast iron stove, some basic furniture, the kind of place built by men for men. No thought given to comfort or decoration. It's not much, Bennett said, suddenly seeing the space through her eyes and feeling inadequate. My mother had it fixed up nicer when she was alive. But after she passed, me and my father let things go. Then it's just been me and Dutch. We keep it clean enough, but it's fine, Grace said. She set down her carpet bag, walked slowly through the room, running her hand along the back of a chair, looking at everything. Where do I sleep? The question was so direct it made him uncomfortable. Upstairs. There are 3 bedrooms. The big one at the end of the hall was my parents'. It's yours now. I'm in the one on the right. The other's empty. Grace nodded. I'd like to see it. He showed her upstairs. The master bedroom was large, windows facing east and south. Big bed his father had built by hand. Dresser, wardrobe. Like the rest of the house, it was clean but bare. His mother's things had been packed away years ago. Grace walked to the window, looked out at the ranch spread below. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the valley, painting everything gold and amber. It's beautiful, she said quietly. For the first time, Bennett heard genuine emotion in her voice. Yeah, he agreed. It is, when it's not trying to kill you. She turned to face him. They were alone in what would be their bedroom. Suddenly the reality of the situation hit Bennett like a fist. Tomorrow they'd be married. This would be their room. Their bed. He barely knew this woman. She barely knew him. And yet, we should discuss expectations, Grace said, her voice back to its usual practical tone, for the marriage. All right, Bennett leaned against the doorframe, trying to look more casual than he felt. I'll keep the house. Cook, clean, mend, Grace said. I can help with ranch work too if you need it. I've worked with animals before. What kind of animals? Different kinds, another non-answer. Bennett was starting to notice a pattern. And the rest of it, he asked. She looked at him steadily. You mean the marriage bed? Heat crept up his neck. Yeah, that I understand, it's part of the arrangement, Grace said carefully. I won't refuse you, but I'd ask for time, to adjust, to know you better. Relief flooded through him. That's fine, more than fine. This isn't. He struggled to find the right words. I'm not looking to force anything. We can take things slow. As slow as you need. Something in her expression softened. Just a fraction, thank you. You keep thanking me for being basically decent. Makes me wonder what kind of men you've known. Her face closed off immediately. Walls slamming back into place. That's my business. Right. Sorry. Didn't mean to pry. Awkward silence filled the room. Bennett cleared his throat. I'll let you get settled. Dinner's in about an hour. Nothing fancy. I'll probably just fry some steaks and potatoes. Tomorrow after the wedding you can take over the cooking if you want. Or we can figure out some kind of system. Whatever works. I'll cook, Grace said. Starting tomorrow. He nodded, headed for the door, then paused. Grace? Yes, I know this is strange, all of it. But I meant what I said in my letter. I need a partner. Someone I can count on. If you can be that, we'll make this work, and I'll do my best to be a decent husband. Not perfect, but decent. She studied him for a long moment with those unsettling mismatched eyes. That's all I'm asking for, she said finally. Dissent. Bennett left her alone to unpack. Headed back downstairs, his mind churning. He'd expected. Hell, he didn't know what he'd expected. Maybe someone more vulnerable, more obviously desperate, someone who needed saving. But Grace Hartwell wasn't that. She was guarded, secretive, clearly running from something, but she wasn't weak, not even close. Whatever she'd survived before coming here had forged her into something hard and practical and self-contained. which was good. It's what he'd asked for. But it also made him uneasy in ways he couldn't quite name. He started preparing dinner, falling into the familiar rhythm of ranch cooking. Simple food, large portions, meat and potatoes and bread. Nothing complicated. Grace came down about 30 minutes later. She'd changed into a different dress, equally plain, tied her hair back with a piece of string. Without asking, she started helping. Slicing bread, setting the table, filling water glasses from the pump, they worked around each other in the kitchen with surprising ease. No words needed. Dutch arrived just as the food was ready. He pulled off his hat as he entered, nodded to Grace, took his usual seat at the table. The other ranch hands ate in the bunkhouse. But Dutch had been eating with the family since before Bennett was born. That wasn't going to change. The three of them ate in relative silence. Dutch tried a few times to make conversation, asked Grace about her trip, commented on the weather, mentioned some ranch business that needed addressing, got mostly monosyllabic responses. Eventually he gave up, focused on his food. After dinner, Grace insisted on cleaning up. Bennett and Dutch went out to the porch with coffee to watch the sun finish setting behind the mountains. Well? Dutch asked quietly. What do you think? I think she's tougher than she looks. That's not what I asked. Bennett sipped his coffee. I think she's running from something. I think she's got secrets that would probably scare me if I knew them. And I think she's exactly what I asked for. Practical, hardworking, no nonsense. You attracted to her? The question caught him off guard. Dutch, it's a fair question. You're about to marry her. Physical compatibility matters. Bennett thought about it. Grace wasn't beautiful in any conventional sense. She was too thin, too severe, too marked by hardship. But there was something compelling about her, the way she moved, the intensity of her focus. Those eyes that seemed to see right through everything. I could be, he admitted, given time. And her? Think she could be attracted to you? Hell if I know. Woman's a locked box, Dutch chuckled. Well, you did ask for no poets and no dreamers. Can't complain now that you got exactly that. They sat in comfortable silence as full dark settled over the ranch. Lights appeared in the bunkhouse, where the hands were settling in for the night. Somewhere out in the grassland, a coyote yipped. From inside the house, Bennett heard the quiet sounds of Grace moving around. Washing dishes, putting things away. Domestic sounds. The sound of someone making a space their own. You nervous about tomorrow? Dutch asked. Getting married in front of Judge Morrison doesn't scare me. That's not what I asked. Bennett looked at his foreman, this man who'd been a constant presence his entire life. Yeah, he admitted. I'm nervous. I'm bringing a complete stranger into my home, my life, eventually my bed. I don't know what she's running from. Don't know if it might follow her here. Don't know if I'm making a huge mistake. But you're doing it anyway. But I'm doing it anyway. Dutch nodded slowly. Your daddy used to say the only way to know if you're making a mistake is to make it and see what happens. My dad's also died broke and bitter with more enemies than friends. True, but he built this ranch from nothing. Sometimes you got to take risks to build something worth having. Bennett couldn't argue with that. They finished their coffee in silence when Bennett finally went back inside. Grace had finished cleaning and disappeared upstairs. Her door was closed, sliver of lamplight visible underneath. He stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. No sound came from her room. She was either asleep or deliberately quiet. Either way, she clearly didn't want company. Bennett went to his own room, lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The next morning dawned clear and hot. Bennett was up before sunrise as always. Found Grace already in the kitchen, dressed and ready. She'd made coffee, was scrambling eggs. You didn't have to do this, he said. I told you. Starting tomorrow, Grace replied. I'm awake. I might as well be useful. They ate breakfast together in silence. Afterward, they rode into town in the wagon, Dutch following on horseback. The marriage ceremony was scheduled for 9 at the courthouse. Judge Morrison was a practical man who'd seen every kind of marriage the frontier had to offer. Shotgun weddings, marriages of convenience, young love, old desperation. He performed the ceremony in about 3 minutes flat, reading from a well-worn book in a bored monotone. Do you, Bennett Drake, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Grace Hartwell, takes man to be your lawfully wedded husband? A pause. Bennett's heart stuttered. Then I do. By the power vested in me by Montana Territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride if you're so inclined. Bennett looked at Grace. She looked back at him, expression unreadable. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Their lips touched briefly. Awkwardly, First time they'd touched beyond his hand, helping her from the wagon, and just like that, they were married. Dutch signed as witness. Along with Judge Morrison's clerk, Grace signed the marriage certificate in neat, careful handwriting. Bennett noticed her hand shook slightly as she wrote. Only sign of nerves she'd shown. Back at the ranch, life settled into a new rhythm. Grace took over the house completely, and Bennett had to admit she was good at it. Meals appeared on time, hot and well prepared. The house stayed clean. Laundry got done. She even started mending the old curtains his mother had made, bringing color and life back into the rooms. But she remained a mystery. She never talked about her past, never mentioned family or friends or where she'd come from. She was polite but distant with the ranch hands. At night she disappeared into her room, the master bedroom that was supposedly theirs but that Bennett had yet to enter. Closed the door. They were married, but they were strangers. A week passed this way, then two. Bennett found himself growing frustrated with the distance between them. Even though he'd agreed to it, he'd see her working in the kitchen and want to talk to her. Really talk. Get past the walls she'd built. But every time he tried, she'd deflect, give minimal answers, or simply walk away. It was Dutch who finally said something. You two planning to actually be married at some point? Or you just going to keep circling each other like nervous dogs? They were in the barn mending tack. Bennett looked up sharply. The hell's that supposed to mean? Means I got eyes. You watch her, like you're trying to solve a puzzle. She watches you, like she's waiting for you to turn into something dangerous. Neither of you talks to the other about anything that matters. That ain't a marriage, boss. That's a standoff. She needs time. It's been 2 weeks. At some point, one of you has to make a move. Bennett threw down the bridle he'd been working on. What do you want me to do, Dutch? Force myself into her room? Demand she tell me her secrets? I'm trying to be patient. Give her space. I'm not talking about the bedroom, and you know it. Dutch fixed him with a level stare. I'm talking about trust. Partnership. The thing you said you needed when you sent for her. He paused. You're scared of her. That's ridiculous. Is it? She's got you completely off balance. You don't know how to handle her because she's not like anyone you've ever met. So you're keeping your distance, hoping eventually she'll come to you. But here's the thing, Bennett. That woman's been hurt. Bad. I don't know how or by who, but I can see it in the way she moves, the way she never quite relaxes. She's not going to come to you. You have to go to her. Bennett wanted to argue, but he couldn't because Dutch was right. He was scared, not of Grace physically, but of what she represented. All that unknown potential, all those secrets, all that damage he didn't know how to fix. What if I make it worse? He asked quietly. What if you make it better? That night, Bennett knocked on Grace's door. No answer. He knocked again. Grace, can we talk? Long pause, then the door opened. She stood in the doorway in her nightgown, hair down around her shoulders. For the first time since he'd met her, it made her look younger, more vulnerable. Is something wrong? She asked. No. Can I come in? We need to talk. She hesitated, then stepped back, letting him into the room. It was neat as always. Her few possessions organized with military precision. The lamp on the bedside table cast warm light across the bed his father had built. The bed that should have been theirs, but felt like it belonged only to her. What do you want to talk about? Grace asked, arms crossed protectively across her chest. Bennett took a breath. This isn't working. Her face went carefully blank. I'm sorry if my work isn't satisfactory. No, that's not what I mean. Your work is fine. Better than fine. The house has never been cleaner. The food's better than anything I've had in years. And you're doing everything right. He struggled to find the words. Except we're not actually married. We're just two people living in the same house. Being polite to each other, that's what you asked for. A practical arrangement. I asked for a partner, someone I could count on. You can count on someone you don't know. And I don't know you at all, Grace. You don't know me. We're strangers. We agreed I didn't have to tell you about my past. I'm not asking about your past. I'm asking about right now, today. This moment. He stepped closer. Not too close. I'm asking if you're all right, if you're settling in, if there's anything you need. I'm asking if this, he gestured between them, is ever going to be more than two people sharing a house. She stared at him for a long moment, and he saw something flicker in those mismatched eyes, fear maybe, or longing, or both. I don't know how to do this, she said finally, voice so quiet he almost didn't hear it. Do what? Be someone's wife, be close to someone. It's been a long time since I let anyone. She stopped, shook her head. I'm trying. But I don't know how. The admission cost her something. He could see it in the way her hands clenched, the way her shoulders tensed. This woman who faced everything with such calm practicality, was terrified of simple human connection. Then we'll figure it out together, Bennett said, little by little. Start with small things. Have coffee together in the morning. Talk about the day. Share meals. Actually look at each other instead of around each other. And if I can't, if I'm too broken, you're not broken, he said it with certainty. Hurt maybe, scarred, but not broken. Broken things don't work. You work just fine. A sound escaped her that might have been a laugh or a sob. She pressed her hand to her mouth, and Bennett saw her eyes were wet. Hey, he said softly. It's okay, we'll take it slow as you need, but we have to at least try. Otherwise, what's the point? She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Starting tomorrow, Bennett said. We have coffee together every morning before I head out. Just 15 minutes. We talk about anything. The weather, the ranch, whatever. Can you do that? Yes, she whispered. Good. That's good. He moved toward the door, then paused. Grace. Thank you for trying. He left her alone, closing the door softly behind him. True to her word, Grace was at the kitchen table the next morning when Bennett came down. 2 cups of coffee already poured. They sat across from each other in the early dawn light, and for the first time they talked, really talked, nothing deep. Bennett told her about the herd they'd be moving to new pasture that day. Mentioned one of the mares was due to foal soon. Complained about the fence that needed mending. Grace listened, asked questions, even offered a few observations. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Over the next few days, those morning conversations became routine. They'd sit together, drink coffee, share small pieces of their days. Grace began to relax. Fraction by fraction, she'd make jokes sometimes. Dry, unexpected humor that caught Bennett off guard and made him laugh. He learned she loved the mountains, that she'd get up before dawn sometimes just to watch the sunrise over the Beartooths. He learned she had a gift with animals. The barn cats, that avoided everyone else, would curl up in her lap. The chickens followed her around like she was their mother, but she still didn't talk about her past. Still kept that part of herself locked away. It was 3 weeks after their wedding when things changed. Dutch came to the house one afternoon with news. Got a problem, boss. That black stallion we picked up at auction last month. The one you said we'd gentle and sell. He's getting worse, not better. Near took Miguel's hand off this morning. Bennett swore. The black stallion had seemed like a good investment. Beautiful animal with good lines. Young enough to train, but it had turned out to be vicious, attacking anyone who came near its stall. Maybe we should just cut our losses, Dutch said. Sells it to the meat buyers. No, Grace's voice came from the doorway. Both men turned. She was standing there with flour on her apron. Having been in the middle of making bread. Don't sell him, Grace. This horse is dangerous, Bennett began. I know, I can hear him from here. He's terrified. Terrified? Dutch snorted. That animal's mean as a snake. He's terrified, Grace repeated. Voice firm. Fear makes things vicious. Let me try with him. You've been around horses before? Yes. How much? Enough. Grace met his gaze. Let me try. If I can't gentle him, then sell him. But give me a chance first. Everything in Bennett's instincts said this was a bad idea. The black stallion was genuinely dangerous. But something in Grace's expression made him pause. She looked more alive, more present than he'd seen her since she arrived. All right, he said against his better judgment. But Dutch and I will be right there. First sign of trouble, we pull you out. Agreed. They walked to the barn together. Bennett, Grace, Dutch. The black stallion was in the back stall. Massive animal, easily 17 hands. Coal black with a white star on its forehead, beautiful and deadly. As they approached, it started throwing itself against the stall walls, screaming with rage. Jesus, Dutch muttered. That thing's possessed. But Grace walked right up to the stall door. Calm as anything, the horse wheeled toward her, teeth bared. Bennett's hand went to the latch, ready to pull her back, but she didn't flinch, just stood there, one hand resting on the stall door, looking at the animal. Hey, she said softly. I know you're scared. I know what it's like when the whole world hurts you, and you don't know who to trust anymore. The horse pawed the ground, snorting, but didn't charge. They're going to kill you if you keep this up. Grace continued in that same quiet voice. They'll sell you for meat, and you'll die scared and alone and angry. Is that what you want? Bennett exchanged a glance with Dutch. This was crazy. She was talking to the horse like it was a person. But the horse was listening. It had stopped throwing itself around, was standing still, watching Grace with eyes that rolled white with fear and fury. Or Grace said, you could let me help you. Let me show you that not everyone wants to hurt you. Let me prove that sometimes. If you're brave enough to trust, life can be different. She reached for the stall latch. Grace, no. Bennett grabbed her arm. She turned to look at him. What he saw in her mismatched eyes stopped him cold. Pain. Deep old pain that had nothing to do with the horse, and everything to do with whatever she'd survived before coming here. "Please," she said quietly, "let me try." Against every instinct, every ounce of common sense, Bennett released her arm and stepped back. Grace opened the stall door, stepped inside with the most dangerous horse in the territory, and brought us back to where the story began. The stall door swung shut behind Grace, with a sound like a coffin closing. Bennett's heart slammed against his ribs as the black stallion wheeled toward her. Massive and furious in the confined space, Dutch's hand was already on his rifle. But Bennett grabbed his wrist. "Wait." The word came out hoarse, "Boss, she's..." "Wait." Grace stood just inside the door, back against the rough wood, making herself small. She wasn't looking at the horse directly, gaze soft, unfocused. Pointed somewhere near its shoulder, the stallion snorted, head high, muscles bunched under that gleaming black coat. It could crush her in seconds. They both knew it. "I'm not going to hurt you." Grace's voice was barely above a whisper. "I know you don't believe me. Nobody's given you a reason to believe anything good. But it's true." The horse pawed the ground, sending up little explosions of straw and dust. Ears pinned flat against its skull, teeth bared. Every line of its body screamed violence. "That mare in the next stall?" Grace continued, still not moving. "She had a foal last spring. Brown filly with white socks. Dutch told me about her at breakfast. They sold the filly to a family up north, and the mare cried for 3 days. Her voice caught. They took her baby, and she cried. You understand that kind of loss, don't you? Having something ripped away?" The stallion's ears flicked forward. Just a fraction. Just for a second. But Bennett saw it. "Jesus Christ." Dutch breathed beside him. "She's actually getting through to it." Grace took a half step forward. The horse's head snapped toward her. A warning. She froze. "I had something taken from me too," Grace said. "Someone I loved. Someone who needed me. And I couldn't stop it. Couldn't fight back. All I could do was survive, and try not to let the anger eat me alive from the inside out." Bennett's throat tightened. This was more than she'd revealed in 3 weeks of marriage. More than he'd thought she'd ever share. And she was sharing it with a horse that wanted to kill her. "But here's what I learned," Grace continued. "The anger doesn't protect you. It just makes you alone. Makes you so mean and scared that nobody can get close enough to help. And then one day you wake up and realize you're going to die like this. Angry and alone and so tired of fighting everything." She took another step. The stallion backed up. Confused now, this wasn't how things usually went. People didn't walk toward him calmly. They came at him with ropes and whips and fear in their eyes. "So I'm asking you to be braver than I was," Grace said. "I'm asking you to trust me. Just a little. Just enough to let me stand here without trying to kill me. Can you do that?" The barn had gone completely silent. Except for the sound of the horse's harsh breathing, Bennett realized he'd stopped breathing himself. Beside him, Dutch was rigid as stone. Grace extended her hand. Palm down. Moving so slowly it was almost imperceptible. The stallion's nostrils flared. It could smell her fear. Bennett was sure of it. But also something else. Recognition, maybe. The scent of shared trauma. "That's it," Grace murmured as the horse's head lowered a fraction of an inch. "That's good. I'm not going to grab you. I'm not going to force anything. I'm just going to stand here and breathe with you. That's all." Minutes crawled by. Bennett's hand ached from gripping the stall door, but he didn't dare move. Grace and the stallion were locked in some kind of silent negotiation that he couldn't fully understand. Her hand was still extended. Waiting, the horse was still watching her, ears swiveling between forward and back. Trying to decide then. So slowly Bennett almost missed it. The stallion stretched its neck forward, touched its nose to Grace's palm. The contact lasted maybe 3 seconds, then the horse jerked back, snorting. Upset with itself for showing weakness, but it didn't charge. Didn't try to bite or strike, just stood there. Trembling. "Good," Grace said. Tears in her voice. "That's so good. You're so brave. Braver than me." She started talking then. Steady stream of words that washed over the horse like water. She talked about the ranch. About the mountains she could see from her bedroom window. About the barn cats and how the orange one had started sleeping on her bed. She talked about the bread she'd been making when Dutch came to the house. How she'd probably burned it by now, and Bennett would give her grief about it. Small things. Safe things, the kind of meaningless domestic details that somehow meant everything. And slowly, impossibly, the stallion began to relax. "We should probably stop her soon," Dutch said quietly. "She's been in there almost 20 minutes. Don't want to push it," Bennett nodded, but he couldn't bring himself to interrupt. He was watching his wife, this woman he'd married 3 weeks ago, the stranger he was trying to know, and seeing her truly for the first time. The walls she'd built around herself were still there. But inside this stall, with this damaged animal, she'd let them crack open just enough to reveal the person underneath. Someone who understood pain, who'd survived something terrible, who carried scars that went deeper than skin. Someone who was trying, despite everything, to be brave. Grace, Bennett said finally, voice rough. That's enough for today. Come on out. She blinked, like she'd forgotten he was there, then nodded, backed slowly toward the door. Never taking her eyes off the horse, the stallion watched her go, but didn't follow, didn't tack. When she slipped out of the stall and Bennett closed the door behind her, the animal just stood there, no longer throwing itself against the walls. Grace's hands were shaking. Now that it was over, the adrenaline was draining out of her. Leaving her pale and unsteady, Bennett caught her elbow. You, all right? Yes, but her voice was thin as paper. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen, Dutch said. Genuine respect in his voice. Thought for sure we were about to watch you die, ma'am. He wasn't going to kill me. Grace pulled away from Bennett's grip, wrapping her arms around herself. He just wanted someone to understand. They walked back to the house together. Dutch heading to check on the rest of the stock. Grace went straight to the kitchen, stood at the window staring out at nothing. The bread's ruined, she said absently. I'll have to start over. Forget the bread. Bennett moved to stand beside her. What you said in there, about having something taken from you, about someone you loved, don't. The word was sharp as a knife. Please don't ask me about it. I'm your husband. You're a man I married 3 weeks ago because I had nowhere else to go. She turned to face him, something fierce and desperate in her expression. You want honesty? Fine, here's honesty. I came here because I was running from my past, from people who would hurt me if they found me, from a life that was killing me piece by piece. You offered me a way out and I took it. That's all this is. Bennett's own temper was rising now. You think I don't see you? You think I don't notice that you haven't unpacked half your bag because you're ready to run at a moment's notice? Or that you sleep with your boots next to your bed? Or that you flinch every time a man raises his voice? She went very still. You've been watching me. Of course I've been watching you. You're my wife. I'm trying to figure you out. Trying to understand. You can't understand. Her voice broke. You can't possibly understand what it's like to have your entire life destroyed. To have everything you thought you knew about yourself proven wrong. To survive something that should have killed you and wake up every day wishing it had. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Try me, Bennett said finally. Tell me what happened. Let me help. You can't help. Nobody can help. The only thing that helps is distance and time and hoping to hell that the people I left behind don't come looking. She pressed her palms against her eyes. I shouldn't have said anything. I shouldn't have let you see. Well, I saw, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't. Bennett gentled his voice. Grace, whatever you're running from, whatever happened to you, you're safe here. I meant what I said in my vows. You're under my protection now. Anyone comes for you, they go through me first. She laughed. But it was a broken sound. You don't know what you're promising, then tell me. For a moment he thought she might. Her mouth opened, words forming on her lips. But then she shook her head, pushed past him, heading for the stairs. I need to lie down. I'll start dinner later. She was gone before he could respond. Footsteps heavy on the stairs. Bennett heard her bedroom door close, followed by the distinctive sound of the lock turning. She'd locked him out. He stood in the kitchen, frustrated and worried and angry at himself for pushing too hard. But he also understood something now. Whatever had happened to Grace before she came to Montana, it had nearly destroyed her, and she was still waiting for it to finish the job. That night Bennett knocked on her door to tell her dinner was ready. He'd made stew, nothing fancy, got no response. He left a plate outside her room, went to bed hungry, staring at the ceiling and thinking about his wife locked away in the next room. The next morning she was up before him again, plate from last night washed and put away. Fresh coffee brewing. She moved through the kitchen like nothing had happened, like she hadn't cracked open the previous day and shown him her wounds. Morning, she said without looking at him. Morning. Bennett poured himself coffee, sat down. This was their routine now, their 15 minutes of conversation. But today the silence stretched between them, uncomfortable and loaded. I'm going to work with the stallion after breakfast, Grace said finally. If you're still willing to be there. I said I would be. Good. More silence. Bennett traced the rim of his coffee cup with one finger. I'm sorry. For pushing yesterday, for trying to make you talk about things you're not ready to talk about. You have a right to know who you married, maybe. But you have a right to tell me on your own terms. When you're ready. If you're ever ready. He looked at her. I can wait. She turned to face him. Something in her expression had softened. Why? Why what? Why are you being patient with me? Most men wouldn't. Most men would demand answers. Demand their rights as a husband. You could force me to talk. Force me too. She stopped. Swallowed hard. Why aren't you? Bennett set down his coffee cup because I've seen what force does. I watched my father try to force my brother to be the son he wanted. Turned him into a liar who couldn't tell truth from fiction. I watched this territory try to force the land to give more than it could. And it ended in dust storms and failed crops. Force doesn't build anything worth having. It just breaks things that are already damaged. So you're just going to wait indefinitely. I'm going to give you time and space, and hope that eventually you'll trust me enough to let me in. He paused. And if that day never comes, well, we'll still have a partnership. Still have this ranch to run together. That's more than a lot of married folks have. Grace stared at him for a long moment, those mismatched eyes searching his face for something, a lie maybe, a hidden agenda. But Bennett had nothing to hide. He meant every word. The bread's getting cold, she said finally. Voice gentler than before. Eat. They worked with the stallion twice a day after that, morning and evening. Right after breakfast and before dinner. Bennett would stand outside the stall, hating every second, but respecting Grace's need to do this. And slowly, day by day, the horse transformed. It took 3 days before the stallion would let Grace touch it again, a week before it stopped trying to bite her, 2 weeks before it would eat from her hand. The whole time she talked to it in that same quiet, steady voice, telling it things she'd never tell Bennett, stories about growing up, fragments of her past that she offered to the horse like gifts. She'd grown up in Pennsylvania, he learned by eavesdropping, had a mother who sewed, a father who worked in a textile mill, learned to ride from a neighbor who kept horses, small details, carefully chosen. Never enough to paint a complete picture. The ranch hands started gathering to watch sometimes, standing at a respectful distance, amazed by what they were seeing. Joel called it a miracle. Miguel crossed himself and muttered prayers in Spanish. Even Dutch, who'd seen just about everything in 60 years, admitted he'd never witnessed anything like it. She's got a gift, Dutch told Bennett one evening as they watched Grace work. Seen plenty of horsebreakers in my time. This ain't breaking. This is something else entirely. Bennett had to agree. Grace wasn't dominating the stallion. She was healing it, and maybe, in the process, healing herself 3 weeks after she'd first stepped into that stall. Grace led the black stallion out into the corral on a lead rope. It followed her calmly. No fight, no resistance. The gathered ranch hands broke into spontaneous applause. Grace's face flushed. She ducked her head, embarrassed by the attention. What are you going to call him? Joel asked. Horse like that needs a proper name. Grace looked at the stallion, this massive animal that had nearly killed Miguel, that every man on the ranch had given up on. The horse stood beside her quietly, dark eyes finally at peace. Shadow, she said. His name is Shadow. That night at dinner, Grace actually smiled at something Dutch said. It was small, barely there, but it changed her whole face, made her look younger, less haunted. Bennett felt something shift in his chest at the sight of it. After Dutch left and they'd cleaned up the kitchen together, Grace paused at the foot of the stairs. Thank you, she said, for letting me work with him. For trusting me, you earned that trust. She nodded slowly. I've been thinking about what you said, about partnership. She twisted her hands together, nervous. I'd like to try to be more than just 2 people sharing a house. If the offer's still open, Bennett's heart kicked hard against his ribs. It's open. I can't promise I'll ever be able to tell you everything. There are things that happened to me that I can't talk about. Maybe ever. Can you live with that? He thought about it honestly. Could he live with a wife who kept secrets, who might always have walls he couldn't breach? It wasn't ideal. It wasn't what he'd imagined when he'd sent that letter east. But it was real. It was what she could offer. Yeah, he said, I can live with that. Long as you're trying, long as you're here, and not just waiting to run. I'm not waiting to run anymore. She said it like a promise, like a vow more binding than the ones they'd spoken in front of Judge Morrison. This is home now. For better or worse, the words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Bennett wanted to cross the space separating them, wanted to pull her into his arms and hold her until all those broken pieces inside her started fitting back together. But he stayed where he was, giving her the distance she still needed. Good. He said, that's good. Grace climbed the stairs to her room, but this time Bennett noticed. She didn't lock the door. Progress came in inches after that. Grace started sitting with him on the porch after dinner, drinking coffee and watching the sun set over the mountains. She'd ask him about the ranch, about his plans for expanding the herd, about his life before she arrived. He'd answer honestly, editing nothing, and sometimes she'd offer small pieces of herself in return. He learned she was afraid of thunderstorms, that she once wanted to be a teacher, that she could speak a little French, learned from a woman she'd worked for years ago, that she missed the ocean, though she wouldn't say where she'd lived near it. Small things, but they added up. A month after she'd gentled Shadow, Grace started riding him. Bennett's heart was in his throat the first time she climbed into the saddle, certain the horse would revert to its old violence. But Shadow stood calm as a plow horse, responding to Grace's gentle commands like they'd been working together for years. She rode every morning after that, heading out into the grasslands with Shadow. Sometimes gone for hours, Bennett learned not to worry. She always came back, face flushed from the wind, eyes clearer than he'd ever seen them. "It's like flying," she told him once. "Like I can finally breathe." One evening in late September, they were sitting on the porch when Grace spoke without preamble. "I was married before." Bennett went very still. She'd never volunteered information like this before. Never opened that door without him knocking first. "His name was Victor," she continued, staring out at the darkening sky. "We married young, too young. I was 17, thought I was in love. Thought I knew what I wanted." Long pause. "I was wrong about everything." Bennett didn't speak, afraid that any sound might make her stop. He was kind at first, charming. But after the wedding things changed. He changed. Or maybe he just stopped pretending. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "He liked to hurt me, liked to make me small. And I let him because I thought that's what marriage was. What I deserved." Grace, the name came out strangled. "Let me finish, please." She took a shaky breath. "It went on for 3 years. 3 years of walking on eggshells, of trying to be perfect enough that he wouldn't get angry. But he always got angry. Always found a reason." Bennett's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to ask where this Victor was now. Wanted to hunt the bastard down and teach him what it felt like to be hurt by someone stronger. But he stayed quiet. Let her talk. "Then I got pregnant." Grace's voice cracked. "A little girl. I loved her more than anything. More than my own life. And for a while Victor was better. He wanted a son, but he seemed happy enough with a daughter. I thought maybe things would be different." The past tense hit Bennett like a fist. Loved. She'd said she loved her daughter, past tense. "She was 2 years old when it happened," Grace whispered. "Victor had been drinking. I'd burned dinner. Such a stupid small thing. But he was so angry. Started hitting me worse than usual. And she was there. My little girl was there, crying, begging him to stop." Tears were streaming down Grace's face now, but her voice remained steady. He turned on her, told her to shut up, raised his hand to her. "Jesus Christ." Bennett breathed. I stopped him, hit him with a cast iron pan, knocked him out cold. Then I grabbed my daughter and I ran. We ran for 2 days, hiding, trying to get somewhere safe. But Victor had friends, people who helped him look for us. They found us in a boarding house in Philadelphia. Grace's hands were shaking now, trembling so hard she had to clasp them together. He took her from me, my baby. He had papers, legal documents saying I was an unfit mother, that I'd abandoned my family. His friends testified against me. The judge believed him. Gave him full custody. Told me if I ever came near either of them again, I'd go to prison. That's not legal. He can't just. He can when he has money and connections and a wife with no family, no resources, no way to fight back. Grace wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. That was 4 years ago. I haven't seen my daughter since. Don't even know if she's still alive. Her voice broke completely. If he's hurting her the way he hurt me. Bennett couldn't stand it anymore. He crossed the porch, pulled Grace into his arms, half expecting her to fight him, to push him away, but she didn't. She collapsed against his chest and sobbed, great heaving cries that shook her entire body. He held her through it, one hand in her hair, the other rubbing circles on her back, murmuring meaningless comfort. When she finally quieted, she stayed in his arms, face pressed against his shirt. "That's why I came here," she said, voice muffled, "to get as far away from him as possible, to disappear. I couldn't save my daughter, couldn't fight for her. All I could do was survive and hope that someday, when she's old enough, she'll come looking for me. That she'll understand why I left. You didn't leave. He stole her from you. Tell that to the voice in my head that calls me a coward every night." She pulled back, looking up at him with red swollen eyes. "Now you know. Now you know who you really married. A woman who couldn't protect her own child, who ran instead of fighting. You fought with everything you had. It wasn't enough. Sometimes it's not. Bennett cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. But that doesn't make you a coward. Doesn't make you weak. You survived. That's what matters, is it? Her voice was so small, so broken, because most days I'm not sure why I bothered. Because you're still breathing, still fighting. And because maybe someday your daughter will need you to be alive. You can't help her if you're dead, Grace. He brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. I'm so tired of being strong, then don't be. Not right now. Not with me. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped around each other on the porch while darkness fell completely and the stars came out overhead. Eventually Grace's breathing evened out, her body going heavy against his. She was falling asleep, standing up. Come on, Bennett said gently. Let's get you inside. He guided her into the house and up the stairs. At her bedroom door she hesitated. Will you stay? She asked, just for tonight. I don't want to be alone. It was the first time she'd asked him for anything. The first time she'd let herself need him. Yeah, Bennett said. I'll stay. They lay down on top of the covers. Fully clothed, Grace curled against his side, head on his chest. Bennett wrapped his arm around her, stared at the ceiling, his mind churning. He understood now, understood the walls, the secrets, the fear in her eyes. She'd been broken by someone who was supposed to love her, had her child ripped away, had survived because death wasn't an option but living felt like punishment, and somehow she'd found the strength to keep going, to come to Montana, to marry a stranger, to hope, however faintly, that life might still hold something worth fighting for. She was the bravest person he'd ever met. Bennett, Grace's voice was drowsy. Yeah? Thank you for listening, for not making me feel like I'm crazy or weak or you're not any of those things. Sometimes I think I am. Then you're thinking wrong. He tightened his arm around her. Sleep now. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow. She was asleep within minutes, breathing deep and even. But Bennett stayed awake for a long time, making silent promises to the woman in his arms, promises to protect her, to give her the safety she'd never had, to be the kind of man who would never, ever, make her afraid. And if Victor Hartwell ever showed his face in Montana, Bennett would make sure the bastard regretted every breath he'd ever taken. Morning came cold and gray. The kind of October dawn that warned winter wasn't far off. Bennett woke to find Grace already gone from the bed. Though the sheets on her side still held her warmth, he could hear her moving around downstairs, familiar sounds of breakfast being prepared filtering up through the floorboards. When he finally made his way downstairs, Grace was at the stoves frying eggs, hair pulled back in its usual severe knot. She didn't turn when he entered, but her shoulders tensed slightly. Morning, Bennett said. Pouring himself coffee. Morning. Her voice was carefully neutral. Eggs will be ready in a minute. He sat at the table, watched her work. Last night had changed things between them, shifted something fundamental, but he wasn't sure what she needed from him now. We don't have to talk about it, Grace said, not looking at him. Last night, what I told you, we can just, I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. Her eyes flicked up to his, wary. I don't want your pity, good. Because you're not getting it. Pity's for weak people who can't help themselves. You're not weak, Grace. You're a survivor. He set down his fork. But I do have questions. If you're willing to answer them. She went very still. What kind of questions? The practical kind. Victor Hartwell, he doesn't know you're here, right? Doesn't know you came to Montana? No, I was careful. Used a different name when I traveled. Paid cash for everything. Made sure there was no trail he could follow. What name? Grace Marsh. My mother's maiden name. She picked at her bread. I kept my first name because changing it completely felt like erasing the last piece of who I used to be. Stupid, probably. Not stupid. Human, Bennett thought for a moment. Your legal name is still Grace Hartwell, though. We used that on the marriage certificate. Her face went pale. I didn't think. I should have. It's fine. Marriage records aren't exactly published in newspapers. And even if someone did see it, Grace Hartwell from Pennsylvania is a long way from Grace Drake in Montana territory. You're safe here. You can't know that, maybe not. But I can make damn sure that if he does somehow find you, he doesn't walk away from it. The words came out harder than Bennett intended, but he meant them. The thought of that bastard putting his hands on Grace again made something dark and violent rise up in his chest. Grace was watching him with an unreadable expression. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're my wife. That makes you my responsibility, my family, and I protect what's mine. I'm not a possession. That's not what I meant, and you know it. He reached across the table, palm up, waiting to see if she'd take his hand. After a long moment, she did. Her fingers were cold and calloused from ranch work, but they fit against his like they belonged there. What I mean is you're not alone anymore. Whatever fights come, we face them together. That's what marriage is supposed to be. I've been alone for a long time. I'm not sure I remember how to be anything else. Then we'll figure it out together. Same as everything else. He squeezed her hand gently. But you have to trust me, Grace. Really trust me. Which means if something happens, if you get word about your daughter, or if Victor somehow tracks you down, or if you just get scared, you tell me. You don't try to handle it alone. She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. I can't promise that. Every instinct I have says run, hide, handle things by myself. That's how I've survived. Well, now you have other options, do I? The question was genuine, searching because the smart thing for you to do would be to send me away. I'm a liability, Bennett. I've brought my problems into your life, into your home. If Victor does find me, if this gets messy, then it gets messy. I've dealt with messy before. He stood up, came around to her side of the table. My brother tried to run off with another man's wife once. Nearly got both of them killed when her husband came after them with a shotgun. I had to talk that man down. Convinced him his wife wasn't worth the rope they'd hang him with. Bennett crouched down beside her chair so they were eye level. Listen to me. I'm not sending you away. I'm not going to wake up one morning and decide you're too much trouble. We made vows, Grace, in front of a judge. Legal and binding. You're stuck with me now. For better or worse. Tears welled up in her eyes. Why are you being so decent about this? Because someone should have been decent to you a long time ago. And since nobody was. I figure I'll start now. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. And before Bennett could react, she'd leaned forward and kissed him. It was sudden and graceless. Her lips pressed hard against his, like she was trying to prove something to herself. He froze for a second, surprised, then gentled it. One hand coming up to cup the back of her head. When they broke apart, Grace's cheeks were flushed. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize for that. His voice came out rougher than intended. You can kiss your husband whenever you want. We haven't. I mean, we've been married almost 2 months and we haven't. I know, and we don't have to, until you're ready. But I'm not going to lie and say I don't want to. Because I do. More than you probably realize. Grace searched his face, looking for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she leaned in and kissed him again. Slower this time, more certain. Bennett let her set the pace, let her explore. Felt the exact moment she relaxed into it and stopped treating it like a test, when they finally broke apart, both breathing harder. Grace rested her forehead against his. I'm going to try, she whispered. To let you in, to trust this. It scares the hell out of me. But I'm going to try. That's all I'm asking. They stayed like that for a while. Wrapped around each other in the morning light, until the sound of Dutch's boots on the porch broke the moment. Grace pulled back quickly, smoothing her skirt. Face flushing again, Dutch knocked, entered without waiting for an answer as usual. Morning. Jack says one of the fence lines is down on the north pasture. Probably need to. He stopped, looking between them. Am I interrupting something? No, Grace said quickly, standing up and busying herself with clearing the table. Yes, Bennett said at the same time, shooting Dutch a look that said bad timing, old man. Dutch's weathered face creased in a grin. Well, about damn time you two started acting like a married couple. I'll go check that fence myself. Take your time. He backed toward the door, still grinning like a fool. Dutch, Bennett warned, already gone, boss. The door closed behind him, and Bennett could hear the old man chuckling as he walked away. Grace was at the sink, shoulders shaking. For a second Bennett thought she was crying, but then he heard it. She was laughing. Actually laughing, deep and genuine in a way he'd never heard from her before. He's going to tell everyone, isn't he? She said between laughs. Oh, absolutely. By noon the whole ranch will know that the boss and his wife were kissing in the kitchen like teenagers. How embarrassing. Is it though? Bennett moved behind her, not quite touching, but close enough to feel her warmth. Let them talk. Let them know you're mine and I'm yours. I'm not ashamed of it. She turned to face him. There was something different in her expression, something lighter. Neither am I, she said, sounding surprised by her own words. I'm not ashamed. The rest of that day passed in a strange kind of suspended happiness. Bennett went out to help fix the fence line. Came back for lunch to find Grace had made his favorite stew without him having to mention it. She'd been paying attention all along to what he liked. They ate together on the porch, shoulders touching, and if the ranch hands noticed and exchanged knowing looks, neither Bennett nor Grace cared. That afternoon Grace worked with Shadow as usual, but this time Bennett joined her in the corral instead of watching from outside. The stallion accepted his presence without fuss. responding to both their commands with an ease that still amazed him. "You want to try riding him?" Grace asked. Bennett eyed the massive horse. "You sure he's ready for that?" "He's ready, and he needs to learn to trust other people. Not just me." She handed him the reins. "Talk to him first. Let him get used to your voice." Bennett felt ridiculous talking to a horse, but he did it anyway, keeping his voice low and calm the way Grace did. Shadow's ears swiveled toward him, listening. When Bennett finally swung up into the saddle, the stallion shifted, but didn't spook. "Good," Grace said, watching them. "Now just walk him around the corral. Let him feel your weight, your balance." They spent the next hour like that, Grace coaching Bennett through working with Shadow, her voice patient and sure. It was the first time they'd truly worked together on something, moving as a team instead of two separate people orbiting each other. And it felt right in a way Bennett hadn't expected. As the sun started to set, painting the mountains gold and purple, Grace came to stand beside him at the corral fence. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For today, for this morning, for everything. You keep thanking me for being decent, because decency feels like a miracle after everything else." She leaned her head against his shoulder, simple gesture of trust that meant more than any words. "I'm happy, right now, in this moment. I'm actually happy. I didn't think I'd ever feel that again." Bennett wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her closer. "Get used to it. I plan on making you happy as often as possible. That's a dangerous promise. Good thing I'm not afraid of a little danger." They stood there until full dark, watching the stars come out one by one over the Montana wilderness. And, for the first time since Grace had stepped off that train 2 months ago, Bennett felt like they were building something that might last. But 3 days later, Thomas Brennan showed up at the ranch with news. Bennett was in the barn, mending tack, when he heard the wagon coming up the drive. He stepped out to see Brennan pulling up in front of the house, face carrying that particular expression of someone who had gossip and couldn't wait to share it. "Brennan," Bennett said, not bothering Tongnahai's lack of enthusiasm. "What brings you out here?" "Official business, Drake. Where's your wife? She needs to hear this too." Something cold slithered down Bennett's spine. "Hear what?" Grace appeared in the doorway of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She went very still when she saw Brennan, posture shifting, shoulders back, spine straight, walls slamming into place. Whatever this was, she sensed it was bad. "Mrs. Drake," Brennan said, tipping his hat with exaggerated politeness. "I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news. There's a gentleman in town asking questions about you. Says he's your husband." Grace's face went bone white. "That's impossible." "That's what I told him. Explained you'd married Bennett here, legal and proper. But he insists you're Grace Hartwell, originally from Philadelphia, and that you're still legally married to him. A Mr. Victor Hartwell." Brennan was clearly enjoying this. "The bastard. Says he's come to collect his wife and take her home where she belongs." "Get off my property." Bennett's voice was deadly quiet. Brennan blinked. "Now Drake, I'm just the messenger. You're a gossip who can't wait to spread other people's misery. And I said get off my property before I throw you off. There's no need for threats. I'm simply doing my civic duty, informing you that there may be some legal complications with your marriage." Bennett took 3 long strides toward the wagon. Brennan scrambled to gather his reins. "I'm going, but you should know. Hartwell's staying at the boarding house. Says he's not leaving without his wife. Judge Morrison is reviewing the situation." The wagon pulled away in a spray of gravel, Brennan looking back over his shoulder with barely concealed glee as soon as he was out of sight. Grace's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, whole body shaking. Bennett was beside her in an instant. "Grace, he found me." Her voice was thin, distant, like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. "I was so careful. I made sure there was no trail." "How did he find me?" "It doesn't matter how. What matters is what we do now." Bennett took her hands in his. They were ice cold despite the mild afternoon. "Look at me, Grace. Look at me." She slowly raised her eyes to his. The fear there nearly broke his heart. "We're going to fight this. You're not going back with him. I don't care what legal papers he has or what lies he tells. You're my wife now and you're staying right here. You don't understand. Victor always wins. He has money. Lawyers, judges in his pocket. He doesn't have me." Bennett stood up, pulling her with him. "Dutch, get the horses ready. We're going into town." Dutch emerged from the bunkhouse where he'd clearly been eavesdropping. "Already on it, boss." No, Grace tried to pull away. "I can't face him. If I see him, you don't have to face him alone. I'll be right there the whole time." Bennett cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to focus on him. "Listen to me. You're not the same woman who ran from him 4 years ago. You're stronger now. You've survived things he can't imagine. And you're not alone anymore. You have me. You have Dutch. You have this ranch and everyone on it. We're your family now and we protect our own. He'll hurt you. He'll find a way to destroy everything you've built here. Let him try." Bennett's voice hardened. "I've been protecting this ranch and this family since I was 20 years old. I've dealt with land grabbers, cattle thieves, droughts, blizzards. One entitled bastard from back east doesn't scare me." They rode into town. Bennett, Grace, Dutch following on horseback. The ride felt like riding toward an execution. Grace was silent the whole way, face pale and set, looking like she might shatter at any moment. Bennett kept his horse close to hers, ready to catch her if she bolted, because he could see it in her eyes. She was calculating escape routes, trying to figure out if she could run before this got worse. "Don't," he said quietly as they neared the edge of town. "Don't even think about running. It's all I know how to do. Then it's time to learn something new. Time to stand and fight. I don't know if I can. You face down a killer stallion with nothing but your voice and your courage. You can face one coward of a man with an entire ranch backing you up." They rode down the main street of Copper Bend, drawing stares from everyone they passed. News traveled fast in small towns. Clearly, everyone had already heard about the stranger claiming to be Grace's real husband. Judge Morrison's office was in the courthouse, squat stone building that served as the center of what passed for law in this corner of Montana Territory. Bennett helped Grace down from her horse. She stood there for a moment, staring at the courthouse door, like it was the entrance to hell. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Bennett, I can't." The courthouse door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, well-dressed in an expensive suit that looked absurd in the rough frontier town, dark hair graying at the temples, handsome in a way that probably charmed people, cold eyes that swept the street until they landed on Grace, and when they did, his face split into a smile that made Bennett's blood run cold. "Grace," Victor Hartwell said, voice smooth and cultured. "There you are, darling. I've been so worried." Grace made a sound like a wounded animal, whole body trembling. Bennett could feel her trying to back away, every instinct screaming at her to run. He caught her hand, held it tight. "You must be Drake," Victor continued, walking down the courthouse steps with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. "Thank you for taking care of my wife while she was confused. I'm sure this has all been a terrible misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Bennett said, voice hard. "Grace is my wife. Legally married 2 months ago, right here in this courthouse." "Ah, yes." About that, Victor's smile never wavered. "I'm afraid that marriage is invalid. You see, Grace was already married when she took vows with you, which makes you either a bigamist or a fool, depending on whether you knew about me or not." "I knew," Bennett said, "and I don't give a damn." Victor's smile faltered slightly. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me. I knew Grace was married before. She told me about you, about what you did to her, how you beat her, how you stole her child." Bennett took a step forward. Victor actually stepped back. "And I don't care if our marriage is technically invalid. She's not going back with you. That's not your decision to make." Victor's voice hardened. "Grace is my wife, my property, legally speaking, and I'm taking her home. Over my dead body. That can be arranged, Trey it." Victor looked past Bennett to Grace, who was still frozen behind him. "Grace, darling, tell this frontier brute to step aside. It's time to come home. I've missed you terribly." Grace couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stood there. All the strength and courage she'd built over the past months crumbling in the face of her abuser. And that's when Bennett understood something. This wasn't a legal battle. This was a power play. Victor Hartwell had traveled all the way to Montana Territory. Not because he loved his wife or wanted her back. He'd come because she dared to escape him, dared to choose her own life, and he couldn't let that stand. This was about control, about making sure Grace knew that no matter how far she ran, he could always find her, always bring her back, always win. Well, Victor Hartwell had never met anyone like Bennett Drake before. "Judge Morrison." Bennett called without taking his eyes off Victor. "I know you're in there. Get out here." The judge emerged from the courthouse looking uncomfortable. "Now, Bennett, this is a delicate situation. What's the law say? Can Keith force her to go back with him?" Morrison sighed. "Legally speaking, if their marriage was never dissolved, then yes, a man has the right to beat his wife, to terrorize her, to steal her child. Those are serious accusations," Victor interjected smoothly and completely unfounded. "Grace has always been prone to dramatics and delusions. It's part of why she needs care and supervision. She's not delusional. She's terrified. Look at her." Bennett gestured to Grace, who was still shaking, tears streaming down her face. Does she look like a woman who wants to go home with her loving husband? Victor's expression darkened. How my wife and I conduct our marriage is none of your concern, Drake. Grace, come here. Now Grace flinched at the command in his voice. Bennett saw her start to move forward. Out of pure conditioned response, 4 years of training under Victor's control, she still responded to his orders like a beaten dog. No, Bennett stepped in front of her, blocking Victor's view. She's not going anywhere with you. You're interfering with a man's legal rights to his wife. I'm protecting a woman from her abuser. And if the law says I can't do that, then the law can go to hell. A crowd had gathered now. Townspeople emerging from stores and houses to watch the confrontation. Bennett could see Victor assessing the situation. Calculating, the man was smart. He knew that turning this into a physical fight in front of witnesses would make him look bad. Judge Morrison, Victor said. Switching tactics, I'd like to file charges against Mr. Drake for knowingly marrying another man's wife. Surely that's illegal. Morrison looked pained. Well, technically yes, but... And I'd like my wife returned to my custody immediately. By force if necessary. Now, Mr. Hartwell, we don't need to resort to. I have rights. Legal rights, and I demand they be enforced. This was falling apart fast. Bennett could feel it slipping away from him. The law was on Victor's side. There wasn't a damn thing he could do about it short of shooting the man where he stood, which was starting to look like a viable option. Then Grace spoke. Her voice was quiet, shaky, but it cut through the argument like a knife. I'll go with you. Every head turned to stare at her. Bennett's heart stopped. Grace, no, but I have conditions. She stepped out from behind Bennett. Despite her tears, despite her shaking hands, she held Victor's gaze. I want to see my daughter. I want proof she's alive and well. And I want it in writing that you'll grant me a divorce after I've seen her. Victor's eyes narrowed. For a moment Bennett saw calculation there. The man was weighing options. Public scene versus quiet victory. Then his face smoothed into that charming smile. Of course, darling. Anything you want. But Grace wasn't done. Here now. In front of Judge Morrison, Grace's voice strengthened. Put it in writing. Legal and binding. Let me see Lily one time. And then I'll sign whatever divorce papers you want. You get your pride back. Your proof that you found me and won, and I get to know my child is alive. Victor's smile tightened. Bennett could see him doing the math. A public refusal would make him look like the villain, but agreeing put constraints on his control. The man was a narcissist, but he was also pragmatic. 1 hour. Victor said finally, you can see the child for 1 hour. Then we leave for Philadelphia tonight. Divorce papers signed. Tomorrow, Grace countered. We leave tomorrow. I need time to settle my affairs here. Victor's jaw clenched. But hair was boxed in. Refusing would look unreasonable to the watching crowd. Fine, tomorrow. But I want this documented. Legal papers drawn up. Morrison nodded unhappily. I'll have them ready by this evening. It was done. Grace had bought herself 24 hours. But at what cost? She'd agreed to leave. To go back east with the man who'd nearly destroyed her. Bennett grabbed her arm as Victor walked away. Grace, what the hell are you doing? She looked at him with those mismatched eyes. He saw something there he hadn't expected. Not defeat. Not surrender, but determination. Trust me, she whispered. Please, just trust me. They rode back to the ranch in tense silence, as soon as they were inside the house. Grace turned to Bennett. We're not going to Philadelphia. Then what was all that? Buying time, making him think he won. She grabbed his hand, pulled him toward the stairs. Tonight we leave. We run. Head west. He'll expect me to be here tomorrow morning. By the time he realizes we're gone, we'll have a day's head start. Grace. Bennett, I know what you're going to say. That running makes us fugitives. That we're giving up everything you've built here. And you're right. She pressed his wedding ring into his hand. Which is why I'm not asking you to come with me. You can tell everyone I ran off in the night, abandoned you. That way, you're the victim, not the criminal. Your ranch is safe. Your reputation is safe. Stop. Bennett closed his hand around the ring, and then around her hand. Holding it tight. Just stop. You really think I'd let you run off alone? That I'd choose this ranch over you? It's your home, your family's legacy. You're my family now. You're my legacy. He pulled her close, feeling her heart hammering against his chest. If we run together. All of us? All of us? Dutch appeared in the doorway. Boss is right. We're a package deal. Besides, I always wanted to see California. Grace looked between them, tears streaming down her face. You'd give up everything for me? In a heartbeat, Bennett said, this ranch is just land and buildings. You're what matters. She broke down then, sobbing into his chest. Bennett held her while she cried. Already making plans in his head. They'd need to move fast, travel light. Take only what they could carry and leave everything else behind. He'd built this ranch from ruins after his father died, had spent years making it profitable again, and now he was going to abandon it. Walk away from everything he'd worked for. But as he held Grace in his arms, felt her slowly calming down, felt her trust settling into his bones, he knew it was worth it. Some things were worth more than land, worth more than legacy. Some things were worth burning your whole world down to protect. We leave at midnight, he said, Piet. Get Joel and Miguel. Tell them what's happening. They can come with us or stay and run the ranch. Their choice. Either way, they say nothing about where we've gone. On it, Dutch disappeared downstairs. Bennett cupped Grace's face in his hands, wiping away her tears. You with me? She nodded. Unable to speak, then let's get packed. We've got a long ride ahead of us. They worked in controlled chaos for the next few hours, packing supplies with the quiet efficiency of people who'd been preparing for disaster their whole lives. Grace moved through the house, touching things. The kitchen table where they'd shared morning coffee, the curtains she'd mended, the bedroom where she'd finally felt safe enough to sleep without locking the door. Each touch felt like a goodbye. Downstairs, Bennett was gathering cash from the strongbox he kept hidden behind a loose floorboard. 5 years of profits. Carefully saved, $3,800. It wouldn't last forever, but it would get them far enough away to start over. He tried not to think about what he was abandoning, the herd he'd built, the land his father had fought for, the legacy he'd spent his adult life protecting. Dutch came back with Joel and Miguel just before sunset. Both ranch hands looked shaken. This is really happening? Joel asked. Young face pale. You're just going to leave? Not much choice, Bennett's. Grace's first husband showed up. Legal mess. We have to disappear before he can force her back east. He looked at both of them. You two have a choice. Come with us. No guarantees where we'll end up or what we'll find. Or stay here and run the ranch. I'll sign papers giving you joint ownership. You've both earned it. Joel and Miguel exchanged a look. How far are we going? California, maybe. Or Canada. Wherever Victor Hartwell can't follow. And we'd be fugitives. Running from the law? Probably. Bennett wasn't going to lie to them, though if anyone asks. You didn't know anything about it. We just left in the night and you woke up to find us gone. Miguel shook his head slowly. My family is here. My mother, my sister. I can't leave them. Understood. Joel? The young cowboy looked torn. I don't have any family. No ties. But this ranch. It's the only home I've known for 3 years. Then stay. Both of you. Keep it running. If we can ever come back. We will. If we can't. It's... Boss, you can't just give away. I can and I am. Better you have it than Victor's lawyers seize it. Bennett pulled out the deed to the ranch. I'll write up something legal. You witness it, Dutch. And we'll leave it with Judge Morrison tomorrow before we go. That way it's done right. They spent the next hour working out the details. Joel and Miguel would tell anyone who asked that Bennett and Grace had left early. Before dawn. To avoid Victor, they'd seem as shocked as anyone when the couple never came back. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it might keep the ranch hands out of legal trouble as darkness fell. Grace came downstairs carrying 2 packed bags. One hers, one Bennett's. She'd changed into riding clothes, practical and worn, tied her hair back tight. She looked like she had that first day at the train depot. Ready for survival. We should eat something. Dutch said, long ride ahead. Need fuel. They sat around the kitchen table one last time. Forcing down bread and cold meat none of them tasted. The meal felt like a wake. Outside the ranch settled into evening sounds. Cattle lowing in the distance. Chickens going to roost. The creak of windmill blades turning in the breeze. Familiar sounds Bennett had heard every night of his life. I'm sorry, Grace said suddenly, breaking the silence. I'm so sorry I brought this on all of you. Don't, Bennett said. We've been over this. You didn't bring anything on anyone. Victor did. And we're handling it by running. By abandoning everything you've built, by surviving. Same thing you've been doing for 4 years. He reached across the table, took her hand, and this time you're not doing it alone. Dutch cleared his throat. Should probably talk about horses. We'll need the strongest ones, best for distance, and we'll need to travel light, no wagon, just what we can carry in saddlebags. Shadow, Grace said immediately. I'm taking Shadow. Bennett had expected that. The black stallion had become hers in every way that mattered. He's fast and he's got endurance. Good choice. I'll take Duke. He's steady and knows mountain trails. Dutch, Juniper. She's old but she's tough. Won't quit on me. Dutch pulled out a map, spreading it on the table. Now, if we head west toward Idaho territory, we can cut through the mountains here. Rough country, but it'll make us harder to track. 3 days hard riding should get us to Coeur d'Alene. From there we can decide. Push on to Seattle or drop south to California. They studied the map. tracing routes with their fingers, arguing about which passes would be open this time of year, where they could resupply. It felt surreal, planning an escape like this, like they were characters in some dime novel instead of real people throwing away their real lives. Around 10 o'clock, Joel stood up. We should go. Make it look normal. Like we're just heading to the bunkhouse for the night. Miguel stood too. Vaya con Dios, he said to all of them, then seemed to catch himself. I mean, good luck. Stay safe, take care of this place, Bennett said, shaking both their hands. And if anyone comes asking about us, we don't know nothing, Joel finished. You left before dawn. Didn't say where you were going. We're as confused as everyone else. After they left, the house felt emptier than ever. Bennett walked through the rooms one last time, memorizing details. The scorch mark on the kitchen wall where his mother had once let a pot boil over. The window in the parlor that never quite shut right no matter how many times he'd tried to fix it. This house held ghosts. Some good, some bad. His mother's laughter, his father's anger, Sarah's brief presence. Grace's hard-won happiness cut short by the past catching up. He found her in their bedroom, standing at the window looking out at the mountains she loved. She'd left the wedding ring on the dresser. Beside it was a folded piece of paper. Bennett picked it up. Read it. It was a letter to Lily, written in Grace's careful handwriting. My dearest girl, if you ever come looking for me, know that I never stopped loving you. I never stopped fighting to get back to you. But sometimes the world doesn't let us have what we want, no matter how hard we fight. I hope your father is kind to you. I hope you grow up strong and brave and happy, and I hope someday you'll understand why I had to disappear. Love always. Mama, you planning to mail that? Bennett asked quietly. Grace shook her head. I don't even know where to send it. Victor would never let me have her address, and if I tried to find her, he'd use it to track me. She pressed her hand against the window glass. I just needed to write it, needed to put it into words. Even if she never reads them, we'll leave it here, with the ring. That way if she does come looking someday, she'll find it. You think she'll come? I think if she's anything like her mother, she'll move heaven and earth to find you when she's old enough. He came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. And when she does, that letter will tell her everything she needs to know. They stood like that for a long moment, watching the stars appear over the Beartooth Mountains. Then Grace turned in his arms, kissed him, desperate and fierce, like she was trying to memorize the feel of him. Thank you, she whispered against his mouth, for choosing me, for giving up everything for me. I'm not giving up anything that matters. He kissed her back. Slower, deeper. You're what matters. They made love there in the bedroom they'd barely shared, with the moonlight spilling through the window and the knowledge that this might be the last night they'd ever spend in this house. It was rushed and graceless and beautiful, two people clinging to each other in the face of uncertainty. And when it was over, they lay tangled together in the sheets, neither willing to let go. We should sleep, Bennett said eventually. Get a few hours before we leave. But neither of them slept. They just held each other, watched the moon track across the sky, waiting for midnight. When the time came, they dressed silently, gathered their bags. Dutch was already in the barn, saddling horses by lamplight. He'd packed supplies, dried beef, hardtack, coffee, blankets, ammunition, everything they'd need to survive on the trail. Shadow nickered when he saw Grace. She pressed her forehead against his neck. We're going on an adventure, she whispered. Just you and me and Bennett and Dutch. No more standing still. Time to run. They led the horses out quietly, not wanting to wake Joel and Miguel in the bunkhouse. The ranch looked peaceful in the moonlight, completely unaware it was being abandoned. Bennett took one last look at the main house, the barn, the corrals where he'd spent countless hours working cattle and breaking horses. Then he swung up into the saddle, turned Duke toward the mountains. They rode hard through the night, putting distance between themselves and Copper Bend. The trail climbed steadily, winding through pine forests and across rock slopes. Nobody spoke. They were all listening for sounds of pursuit, expecting at any moment to hear horses behind them, voices calling them back. But the night stayed quiet, except for the sound of their own horses' hooves and the occasional cry of a night bird. Dawn came cold and gray, the kind of October dawn that warned winter wasn't far off. They'd put maybe 30 miles between themselves and Copper Bend. Not enough. Not nearly enough, but it was a start. Around 3 in the morning, Dutch called a halt. Horses need rest, and so do we. We push them too hard now. They'll be useless tomorrow. They made a cold camp in a small clearing, not daring to light a fire. Bennett took first watch while Dutch and Grace tried to sleep, but every time he looked over, Grace's eyes were open, staring up at the stars through the pine branches. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. "Can't stop thinking about what happens when Victor realizes we're gone, about how far his reach extends, about whether we'll ever really be free of him. We will be. We get far enough away, change our names, start over. He'll never find us." "You really believe that?" Bennett wanted to say yes, wanted to promise her they'd be safe, that this nightmare would end, but he'd never lied to her before. "Wasn't starting now. I believe we've got a fighting chance, and I believe that's better than what you had before, which was no chance at all." Grace leaned her head on his shoulder. "What if we can't make it work? What if we run out of money, or we can't find work, or we end up worse off than we started? Then we'll figure it out. Same as we've been figuring everything else out." He kissed the top of her head. "I'm not afraid of starting over, Grace. After Sarah died, the ranch was in ruins, debts everywhere, stock scattered, buildings falling apart. Dutch and I rebuilt it from scratch. Took years, but we did it. We can do it again. That was your home. You were fighting for something you loved. I'm still fighting for something I love." He tilted her face up to look at him. "You this, us, that's worth fighting for." She kissed him then, soft and grateful. They sat there, wrapped around each other until Dutch woke up to take his watch, and Bennett finally dozed off with Grace in his arms. When dawn broke fully, they were back in the saddle, riding hard. Following Dutch's map through increasingly rough country, the trail climbed higher into the mountains, winding through passes that were barely more than game trails. It was hard riding. The kind that tested both horse and rider, but it would make them nearly impossible to track. By evening they'd put maybe 50 miles between themselves and Copper Bend. Still not enough. They made camp in a canyon where a small stream provided water. This time Dutch allowed a small fire. They were high enough up and remote enough that smoke wouldn't be visible. Grace cooked coffee and hardtack, while Bennett and Dutch tended the horses. "How you holding up?" Dutch asked quietly. "Been better." "Been worse." Bennett checked Duke's hooves, looking for stones. "You didn't have to come, you know. Could have stayed at the ranch with Joel and Miguel. And miss all this adventure?" "Not a chance," Dutch grinned. But his eyes were serious besides. "Somebody needs to keep you two from doing something stupid, like running off into the wilderness with barely a plan? Like that, yes." They ate dinner in silence, all of them too tired to talk. Grace fell asleep almost immediately after. Curled up in her bedroll near the fire, Bennett covered her with an extra blanket, sat watching her sleep, wondering what the hell he'd gotten them all into. "She's stronger than she looks," Dutch said, following his gaze. "I know, but she's also carrying weight that could break her. 4 years of looking over her shoulder. Now this." Bennett stared into the fire. "What choice do we have?" Dutch poked at the embers with a stick. "We could go back. Face this head on. We'd lose. Victor has everything, money, connections, the law on his side maybe." Dutch looked at him. "Or maybe there's another way." "What are you thinking? What if we don't run from him? What if we go toward him?" Bennett's head snapped up. "You've lost your mind. Hear me out. Victor's in Copper Bend right now, waiting for Grace to show up tomorrow morning, which means his house in Philadelphia is empty. Or at least, he's not there. So that's where Lily is, the daughter. The whole reason Grace is running." Dutch leaned forward. "What if instead of heading west, we go east, get to Philadelphia before Victor realizes what's happening, find the girl, get proof of what he's done, witnesses, evidence. Then we fight him on his own ground with his own weapons." "That's insane." "Is it? Or is it the only way this actually ends?" Dutch's voice was steady. "Certain, because here's the thing, boss. You can run to California, to Canada, to the edge of the damn earth. But Victor will still be out there, still hunting, still winning. And Grace will spend the rest of her life waiting for him to appear." He paused. "Running never ends. You run far enough and long enough. Eventually you forget what you're running toward. You're just running away." The words hit Bennett like a fist, because Dutch was right. They could flee for years, change their names, build new lives. And Grace would never be free. She'd always be looking over her shoulder, always afraid, always waiting for Victor to find her. And Lily would grow up believing her mother abandoned her. Was that really better? "Even if we went east," Bennett said slowly, "even if we somehow got to Lily. What then? We kidnap her? Become actual criminals? We gather evidence. Servants who've seen what Victor does. Medical records. Witnesses. Then we take it to authorities who aren't in his pocket. We fight him with truth instead of running from his lies." Dutch met his gaze. "It's a long shot. I know. But it's the only shot where Grace actually wins. Where she gets her daughter back and doesn't have to hide for the rest of her life." Bennett looked at Grace sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. She'd been running for 4 years, running from Victor, from her past, from the pain of losing her daughter, and now he'd convinced her to keep running. Was that really the best he could offer? "Let me think about it," he said finally. They took turns on watch that night. And in the morning they rode on, but Dutch's words kept echoing in Bennett's head. Running never ends. 3 days into their flight, they reached a small mining town called Silver Creek. Barely more than a collection of shacks clinging to the side of a mountain. They stopped to resupply. Coffee, flour, ammunition, and that's when they heard the news. "You folks coming from Copper Bend?" the general store owner asked as he bagged their purchases. Bennett tensed. "Why do you ask?" "Just heard some excitement's going on over there. Rich man from back east showed up looking for his runaway wife. Caused quite a stir." The man leaned in conspiratorially. "Word is the wife married some rancher, while still legally hitched to the first husband. Now both men are missing along with the woman. Federal marshal's been asking around. Says there's Pinkerton agents working the case now." He looked at them more carefully, got descriptions and everything. Tall rancher, brown hair, scar on his left hand, woman with 2 different colored eyes. Old cowboy traveling with them. Bennett kept his face carefully neutral. "That's so?" "Yep." The store owner's eyes narrowed slightly. "Funny thing. You folks match those descriptions pretty well." Dutch's hand moved to rest on his rifle. "Not threatening, just." There the store owner's gaze flicked to the weapon, then back to Dutch's face. "Mission received." "Of course," the man said slowly. "I'm sure it's just coincidence. You folks have a safe journey now." They left quickly, not bothering to hide their urgency. As they rode out of Silver Creek, Grace was shaking. "He'll tell. As soon as we're out of sight. He'll tell the marshal, probably," Bennett agreed. "Which means we need to change plans. Can't keep heading west. That's what they'll expect. So where do we go?" Bennett looked at Dutch, saw his own thoughts reflected in the old man's eyes. Then he looked at Grace. "East. We go east." Grace stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "East? Toward Victor? That's suicide, maybe. Or maybe it's the only way this ends." He pulled his horse to a stop, turned to face her fully. "Dutch made a good point. We can run forever, or we can fight. And fighting means getting your daughter back. Means proving Victor is unfit. Means taking the battle to him instead of letting him chase us. He'll kill us. Or have us arrested. Or he might. But at least we'll go down fighting instead of running." Bennett reached over, took her hand. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But ask yourself this. Do you want to spend the rest of your life hiding? Or do you want Lily to know you fought for her?" Grace's mismatched eyes filled with tears. "I don't even know if she remembers me. She was only 2 when he took her. She's 6 now. I'm probably just a stranger to her. Then you remind her who you are. You show her that her mother never stopped fighting, never gave up, never stopped loving her. And if we fail, if Victor wins again, then at least we tried. At least we went down swinging." Bennett squeezed her hand. "What do you say, Grace? You want to keep running? Or you want to go get your daughter back?" For a long moment she didn't answer. Bennett could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear versus hope, survival instinct versus love. Then something shifted in her expression. Something hardened. "East," she said. "We go east, we get Lily, and we make Victor pay for everything he's done." Dutch let out a whoop. "Now that's what I'm talking about. Knew you had fight in you, girl." They turned their horses, started backtracking, heading away from California and safety, toward Philadelphia and danger. It was possibly the stupidest decision any of them had ever made, but it was also the bravest. As they rode, Bennett started making plans. They'd need to move carefully, gather information before making any moves, timed out where Victor was keeping Lily, who was watching her, what Victor's routines were. They'd need allies, and a hell of a lot of luck. But for the first time since Victor had shown up in Copper Bend, Bennett felt like they were taking control instead of being controlled. They weren't victims anymore, they were hunters. And Victor Hartwell had no idea what was coming for him. The journey east took 2 weeks of hard riding. They traveled fast, mixing horseback with train when they could afford it and when it made sense. 10 days to Chicago on horseback, selling the horses there. Then 3 days by train from Chicago to Philadelphia. They changed their appearance along the way. Bennett grew out his beard, bought spectacles he didn't need. Grace cut her hair shorter, wore men's clothing when they traveled. Dutch traded his cowboy hat for a worker's cap. By the time they reached Philadelphia, they looked like working-class laborers. Nobody special, nobody worth noticing. The city shocked Grace in ways Bennett hadn't anticipated. After 4 years in Montana's open spaces, the crush of humanity, the noise, the stench of coal smoke and unwashed bodies packed into tenements. It overwhelmed her, that first night in a shabby boarding house. She couldn't sleep, kept startling at sounds. Too many people, she whispered. Pressed against Bennett in the narrow bed, too much noise. Can't tell if someone's coming for us or if it's just the city. We'll adjust. We have to. But Bennett felt it too, the walls pressing in. The sky reduced to a sliver between brick buildings, after a lifetime of mountains and endless horizon. Philadelphia felt like a prison. Dutch had been asking questions carefully, posing as a man looking for work, gathering information about Victor Hartwell. What he learned wasn't encouraging. Hartwell's got a house in the wealthy district. Dutch reported 3 days after their arrival. Rittenhouse Square, big place, servants, security, keeps the girl inside most of the time. She's got a governess, private tutors. Neighbors say they never see her outside the grounds. He's keeping her prisoner, Grace said. Hands clenching into fists, just like he did to me. We need to see inside that house, Bennett said. Get the layout. Figure out where Lily sleeps. When the staff changes, security gaps. Can't plan a rescue without intelligence. I might have a way in. Dutch looked at Grace. Hartwell's looking for a new laundress. Previous one quit. Rumor is he threw something at her. If you could get that job. No. Bennett's response was immediate. Absolutely not. I'm not putting Grace back in that house with that man. I'll do it. Grace's voice was steady. It's the only way. I get hired. I work there a few days. I map everything out, and I see Lily. Confirm she's actually there and that she's all right. Grace, this is my daughter Bennett, my fight. I'm not going to hide while other people take the risks. She looked at him with those mismatched eyes. He saw the same determination that had faced down Shadow. I can do this? I have to do this. Avery instinct Bennett had screamed at him to refuse. But she was right. This was her daughter. Her choice. He couldn't protect her from everything, especially not from the things she needed to do to save her child. Fine, he said. But we do this smart. You go in as someone else. Different name, different story, and at the first sign of trouble, the first time Victor recognizes you, you get out. I don't care if we have to abort the whole plan, agreed. They spent the next day preparing. Grace dyed her already a short hair darker, practiced speaking with a different accent, something rougher, more working class. She transformed herself into Mary Sullivan, a recent Irish immigrant looking for honest work. The change was startling. Bennett barely recognized her. On the 4th day, Grace presented herself at the Victor Hartwell household servant entrance. Bennett watched from across the street, heart in his throat. As she spoke with the housekeeper, the conversation lasted maybe 10 minutes. Then Grace was being led inside. Bennett couldn't see her anymore. He waited 3 hours before she emerged again, walking quickly down the street with her head down. Bennett followed at a distance until they were several blocks away, then caught up with her in a small park. Well? He asked. I got the job. Start tomorrow. Grace's face was pale but triumphant. And Bennett. I saw her. I saw Lily, your daughter. She was looking out a window on the 2nd floor just for a moment. But I saw her. She's grown so much. She looks just like... Grace's voice broke. She looks just like I remember. Those same eyes. That same serious expression she'd get when she was concentrating on something. Did she see you? No. I was in the service area. But tomorrow I'll be inside. I'll find a way to talk to her. To let her know I'm here. That night Grace couldn't sleep at all. She paced their small room like a caged animal, alternating between hope and terror. What if Lily didn't remember her? What if the girl had been so thoroughly turned against her mother that she'd scream when Grace revealed herself? What if Victor discovered who she really was? Bennett held her when she'd let him, talked her through the worst of the fear, reminded her why they were doing this. By dawn she was calmer, ready, face set with grim determination. She left for the Hartwell household at 6 in the morning. Bennett and Dutch spent the day in agony, waiting for news, jumping at every footstep in the boarding house hallway. When Grace finally returned at 7 that evening, she looked exhausted, but her eyes were shining. I spoke to her. She said as soon as the door closed behind her, not for long. Maybe 2 minutes while I was bringing laundry upstairs, but I spoke to her. What did you say? I told her my name was Mary, asked her name. She said Lily Hartwell, very proper, like she'd been taught to introduce herself a certain way. Then I asked if she liked music, and she said yes. Her mama used to sing to her before. Grace stopped, swallowing hard before her mama went away. So I hummed a few bars of Shenandoah. Bennett felt his chest tighten. What did she do? She started crying, not loud, just these quiet tears rolling down her face, and she asked me why I knew that song, why I sounded like someone she used to know but couldn't quite remember. Did you tell her? I wanted to. I wanted to scoop her up and run out of that house right then, but I couldn't. Not with the governess in the next room and Victor's people everywhere. Grace's hands were shaking, so I just told her that sometimes songs find their way to the people who need them most. Then the governess called for her and I had to leave. Over the next 5 days, Grace worked in the Hartwell household, carefully mapping every room, every routine, every security measure. She learned that Victor was still in Montana, frantically searching for his missing wife. The house was run by a housekeeper named Mrs. Clara Hayes, a stern woman in her 50s who'd worked for Victor for 15 years. There was a governess, Miss Ruth Carter, who supervised Lily's education, a cook, Molly O'Brien, Irish, with a lilting voice and sad eyes, a maid, Sarah Jenkins, young, timid, and a butler, Henry Walsh, 60, formal, quietly disapproving of his employer. And piece by piece, Grace rebuilt her relationship with her daughter. Small moments stolen in hallways or on the stairs, a word here, a smile there, a few bars of Shenandoah hummed while changing bedsheets. Lily began seeking her out, finding excuses to be where Grace was working, asking questions about her life, her family, where she came from. She doesn't remember me, Grace told Bennett one night, not consciously, but something in her knows. I can see it in the way she looks at me. Like she's trying to solve a puzzle. Maybe it's time to tell her the truth. Not yet. I need to be sure she won't panic, won't cry out. One wrong move and someone will know something's wrong. But on the 6th day, Grace came home with news. Victor's coming back, she said. Face pale, Mrs. Hayes got a telegram today. He's returning from Montana. He'll be here in 2 days. We're out of time, Bet said. We need to get Lily out now. Tonight, Grace nodded. I've been building alliances with the staff. Carefully. They all know what Victor is. Mrs. Hayes, Molly, Sarah, even Henry. They've seen his cruelty. They hate him. Will they help? I think so, if I ask. If I tell them the truth, then tonight we move. You tell them who you are. You get Lily, and we disappear before Victor gets back. That afternoon, while bringing laundry to Lily's room, Grace found her alone. The governess was downstairs having tea. They had maybe 10 minutes, Lily, Grace said quietly, closing the door behind her. I need to tell you something important, something that might scare you, but I need you to listen and stay very quiet. Can you do that? Lily looked up from her book, those mismatched eyes, one brown, one blue, just like her mother's, fixing on Grace with sudden intensity. Who are you? You're not really Mary, are you? No, sweetheart, I'm not. Grace knelt down in front of the girl, hands shaking. My name is Grace. I was. She took a breath. I'm your mother. Lily went very still. My mother went away. Papa said she didn't want me anymore. That's a lie. I never wanted to leave you. Your father took you from me, but I've been looking for you, fighting to get back to you for 4 years. And now I'm here, and I need you to trust me. Can you do that? The girl stared at her for a long moment, then softly. Sing the song. The one you've been humming. Sing the whole thing. Grace sang Shenandoah, voice breaking on the words, tears streaming down her face, and as she sang, she watched recognition dawn in Lily's eyes, watched the little girl start to remember the mother who used to sing her to sleep every night. When the song ended, Lily threw herself into Grace's arms, sobbing, Mama, Mama, you came back. I knew you'd come back. Shh, baby, I know, but we don't have much time. Grace pulled back, wiping Lily's tears. I need you to be very brave. Can you do that? Lily nodded, small face set with determination that reminded Grace achingly of herself. Tonight, after everyone's asleep, I'm coming back for you. There's going to be a man with me. His name is Bennett, and he's my husband now. We're going to take you away from here, away from your father. It might be scary and it might be dangerous, but I need you to trust us. Can you do that? Where are we going? Somewhere safe. Somewhere your father can't hurt you or me ever again. Grace brushed Lily's hair back from her face. Do you understand? Do you trust me? Lily looked at her with those eyes that were so like her own. Will you stay with me this time? Will you promise not to leave again? I promise I will never, ever leave you again. Not for anything, Grace pulled her close. But tonight you have to act normal. Eat your dinner. Go to bed when you're told. Pretend everything is fine. Then wait for me. I'll come for you around midnight. Pack a small bag, just what you can carry. And be ready. I'll be ready, Mama. The governess's voice called from downstairs. Their time was up. Grace kissed Lily's forehead once, quickly, slipped out of the room with her laundry basket. That night, Bennett, Dutch, and Grace finalized their plan. They'd go in through the servants' entrance at midnight. Dutch would keep watch outside. Bennett would handle any interference. Grace would get Lily, and they'd be out in under 5 minutes. Then they'd disappear into the city, catch the first train west in the morning, be back in Montana before Victor could organize pursuit. It was a simple plan, too simple probably. But sometimes simple was all you had. At 11:30, They approached the Hartwell house from the back alley. The streets were quiet. The wealthy neighborhood asleep. Bennett picked the lock on the servants' entrance. The lock gave with a soft click. They were in. The house was dark and silent. Grace led the way through the servants' corridors, up the back stairs, heart pounding so hard she thought everyone in Philadelphia must be able to hear it. They reached the second floor without incident. Lily's room was at the end of the hall. Grace opened the door slowly, carefully. The girl was awake, dressed, a small bag at her feet. Her face lit up when she saw Grace. "Mama," she whispered. "Time to go, baby. This is Bennett. I told you about him. He's going to help us." Lily looked at Bennett with wide eyes. "Are you really my mama's husband?" "Yes, ma'am, and I'm here to make sure both of you stay safe." He held out his hand. "Come on, we need to move fast." Lily took his hand without hesitation, trusting him because Grace trusted him. They moved back toward the stairs, Bennett leading, Grace carrying Lily's bag, the girl between them. They were halfway down the back stairs when the lights came on, and Victor Hartwell stood in the hallway below, fully dressed, a pistol in his hand. Behind him were two men Bennett didn't recognize. Hired security, probably. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out?" Victor asked, looking at Grace with cold satisfaction, the new laundress who took such an interest in my daughter, who hummed songs my wife used to sing. "I've been watching you for days, Grace, waiting to see what you'd do." He raised the pistol, pointing it at Bennett. "And you. The fool who married my wife thinking you could have her. How did you even get here?" "I left you in Montana." Grace pushed Lily behind her. "You're not taking her from me again. I already took her, 4 years ago. This is just me keeping what's mine." Victor's eyes were cold, dead, and now, "I'm going to have all of you arrested. Trespassing, attempted kidnapping, maybe I'll even claim you attacked me. Shot in self-defense." His finger moved to the trigger. Then a voice came from behind them. "I don't think so, Mr. Hartwell." Mrs. Clara Hayes stood at the top of the stairs. Molly O'Brien beside her, Sarah Jenkins, Henry Walsh, all of them looking at Victor with expressions of quiet fury. "We heard everything." Mrs. Hayes said, "Every word about how you stole this woman's child, how you beat her, how you've been lying all these years. You have no right." Victor started. "We have every right." Molly O'Brien stepped forward, her Irish lilt shaking with anger. "We work in this house. We've seen what you are. We've seen how you treat that little girl. Like a possession, not a daughter. Like something you own instead of someone you love. And we're done being silent about it." Sarah Jenkins added, "We'll testify, in court, in front of anyone who'll listen. We'll tell them everything we've seen and heard." Victor's face went red with rage. "You're all fired. Get out of my house." "Gladly," Mrs. Hayes said. "But first we're making sure this woman gets her daughter back." The standoff held for a long moment, everyone frozen in place. Then Lily spoke up, small voice cutting through the tension. "I don't want to stay with you anymore, Papa," she said, stepping out from behind Grace. "You're mean. You hurt people. And you took me away from my real mama." She looked up at Grace. "I want to go with her." Something shifted in Victor's expression for just a second. Bennett saw genuine pain there, like the man had feelings buried under all that cruelty. But then it hardened into rage. "You ungrateful little." He didn't get to finish. Dutch appeared in the doorway behind Victor. Rifle raised, dropped the pistol, Mr. Hartwell. Victor spun, saw the rifle, saw he was surrounded. His two hired men looked at each other, then slowly backed away. Clearly not willing to die for their employer, Victor stood alone, outnumbered, outmaneuvered slowly. He lowered the pistol. "This isn't over," he said, voice shaking with fury. "I'll have you all arrested. Charged, destroyed maybe," Bennett said. "But you'll have to explain to a judge why 4 servants, a 6-year-old child, and a mother fighting for her daughter all say you're a monster. Good luck with that." They moved quickly then, out of the house. Into the night, Mrs. Hayes, Molly, Sarah, Henry, they came with them, witnesses, allies, proof that Grace wasn't alone, wasn't crazy. By morning they were on a train heading west, all of them. Grace, Bennett, Dutch, Lily, the 4 servants. They'd filed statements with a Philadelphia judge before leaving, documented everything. Victor's abuse, the illegal custody, the servants' testimony. It would take time for the legal system to work. But for the first time, Grace had evidence, witnesses, a real chance, and she had her daughter back. Lily sat between Grace and Bennett on the train, small hand in her mother's, other hand in Bennett's, looking out the window as the city disappeared behind them. "Are we going to Montana?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart. To the ranch. To our home. Will there be horses?" "Lots of horses, including one named Shadow. Your mama gentled him. Now he's yours if you want him. Will Papa find us there?" Bennett answered that one. "He might try. But if he does, we'll be ready. You're safe now, Lily. We won't let anyone hurt you or your mama ever again." The little girl seemed to accept this. She leaned against Grace, eyes drooping. Within minutes she was asleep. Grace looked at Bennett over Lily's head, tears streaming down her face. But these were happy tears. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "Yeah, we did." He reached over, took her hand, squeezed it in tight. The journey back to Montana took 2 weeks. Longer than the journey east because they weren't running now. They were going home. When they finally rode into Copper Bend in late November, the town was shocked. Bennett Drake, presumed fugitive, riding down Main Street with his wife, a child, and half a dozen people nobody recognized. Joel and Miguel came running from the ranch when they got word. "Boss, you're back?" "We're back," Bennett said. "And we're staying." Judge Mora called a hearing. The servants testified. Mrs. Hayes, Molly, Sarah, Henry, all of them describing what they'd witnessed in Victor Hartwell's house. Lily testified too, in the judge's chambers. Private, gentle. She told him about her papa's temper, about how he'd hurt her mama, about how she remembered her mama singing to her even though she'd been told her mama was gone. The Philadelphia judge's documentation arrived by telegram, statements, affidavits, legal findings. Victor Hartwell had obtained custody through fraud and perjury. Grace's marriage to him was annulled. Her marriage to Bennett declared valid. Full custody of Lily granted to Grace, and Victor charged with multiple counts of fraud, assault, illegal detention. His business partners abandoned him, his reputation destroyed. He fled Philadelphia to avoid prosecution. Last anyone heard, he was in New York, trying to rebuild under a different name, but he never came to Montana, never tried to take Lily back. He'd lost, finally. Completely. Spring came to Montana in 1888. The Drake Ranch thrived. Joel and Miguel stayed on, grateful to have Bennett back. The 4 Philadelphia servants integrated into ranch life. Mrs. Hayes became housekeeper. Molly cooked. Sarah helped with household work. Henry managed supplies. It was an unusual household, but it worked. Lily blossomed. She learned to ride Shadow. Gentle horses like her mother. Work cattle with Joel and Miguel. She was shy at first, jumping at loud noises, clinging to Grace. But slowly, with time and safety and love, she began to heal. One evening in May, Bennett found Grace on the porch, watching Lily ride Shadow in the corral. The girl laughing. Free. Grace's hand rested on her belly. Bennett noticed. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. She nodded. 3 months. "I wanted to be sure before I told you." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, hand covering hers on her belly. "A baby. Our baby." She turned in his arms. "Are you happy?" Terrified. "And so damn happy I could burst." "Me too." They stood there, watching Lily ride, the sun setting over the Beartooths. "Do you ever regret it?" Grace asked. "Everything you risked? Everything we went through?" Bennett thought about it. The ranch had been in rough shape when they'd returned. Rebuilding had taken everything they had. Money was tight. The law had been complicated. Life was hard in ways it didn't have to be. "But not for a second," he said. "You and Lily, this family, that's what matters. Not land, not money, not reputation. The people you fight for. The people who fight for you. That's what endures." Grace leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you too. And we're going to have 50 years to keep saying it." Lily rode over. "Flushed and happy, Mama." "Bennett, watch this." She put Shadow through his paces, the horse responding to her every command, just like he did with Grace. Gentle, trusting. Healed when she finished. Both Grace and Bennett applauded. "That was beautiful, sweetheart." Grace said. Lily beamed. "Shadow's the best horse in the world. Just like you said, Mama." She looked between them. "Are we staying here forever? In Montana?" "As long as forever lasts," Bennett said. "This is home now. For all of us." The little girl smiled. "Good. I like it here. I feel safe." Those 3 words. I feel safe. Were worth everything they'd risked, everything they'd survived, everything they'd fought for. That night, after Lily was asleep, Bennett and Grace sat on the porch under the stars, the same porch where she'd first told him about Victor, about Lily, about the pain she carried. So much had changed since then, and yet some things remained the same. The mountains, the sky, the wind, the quiet strength between them. "You know what Dutch said to me once?" Bennett asked. "That running never ends. That you run far enough and long enough. You forget what you're running toward. You're just running away." Grace nodded. He was right. I'd been running for so long, I forgot what it felt like to stand still, to have a place, to belong. She looked at him. "Thank you for teaching me how to stand and fight. You taught yourself. I just stood with you while you figured it out." He pulled her close. "And I'll keep standing with you. For as long as you'll have me." "Forever then," she said. "Forever." They sat in comfortable silence, inside the house. Lily slept peacefully. No nightmares, no fear, Mrs. Hayes and the others had settled into their rooms. The ranch hands were in the bunkhouse. Shadow was in his stall. Calm and content. Everything. Everyone. Finally at peace, Grace's hand moved to her belly again. What should we name the baby? She asked. If it's a girl, Bennett thought about it. Sarah, after my first wife. If you're comfortable with that, Grace considered. I am. She deserved to be remembered. Honored. And if it's a boy? James, after my brother. Despite everything, he was still my brother. Grace nodded. Sarah or James Drake. I like that. They stayed on the porch until the moon rose, then went inside together, to the home they'd built, the family they'd fought for, the life they'd earned. Not through running, but through standing, through fighting, through refusing to let fear win. And in the quiet darkness of the Montana night, surrounded by mountains and stars and the people they loved, Grace finally, truly felt free. December 1888, snow fell thick outside the Drake Ranch. Inside, the house was warm, full of life. Grace sat in the rocking chair by the fire, baby Sarah in her arms, born 2 weeks ago. Healthy, perfect. Lily knelt beside them, singing Shenandoah softly to her new sister. Bennett stood in the doorway, watching his family, Dutch beside him. Not bad, boss, Dutch said quietly. Not bad at all. You were right. About everything. Running never ends. We had to stand and fight. Sometimes you got to burn the world down to build something worth keeping. Bennett looked at the old man. Thank you. For coming with us. For standing with us. Dutch grinned. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. Grace looked up. Saw Bennett watching. She smiled. And in that smile, Bennett saw everything that mattered. Love. Trust. Hope. Home, not the place, the people, this family. Built not through blood alone, but through choice, through sacrifice. Through standing together when the world tried to tear them apart. He crossed the room, knelt beside Grace and Lily, put his arm around all three of them, his wife, his daughters, his life. We made it. He whispered, yeah. Grace said, we did, outside. The snow kept falling, covering the ranch in white silence. But inside, there was warmth and light and laughter. There was family. And there was love that had survived everything the world could throw at it. Love that had burned bright enough to light the way home.